At my 6-year-old granddaughter's birthday party, my son-in-law held up the wooden box I gave her and said, "You brought this piece of junk to her party. You're a disgrace to this family." My daughter stood beside the live stream lights and forced a smile. "Dad, don't ruin the atmosphere tonight." The whole room burst into laughter. The cameras kept recording, but when my son-in-law slapped the box out of my granddaughter's hands, a hidden secret inside suddenly burst open across the floor. I'm 68 years old, and I'm standing there watching my son-in-law call me a disgrace in front of my 6-year-old granddaughter, while 60 guests capture the whole thing on their phones. The Harborview banquet hall smells like buttercream frosting and expensive cologne. Ring lights blaze out of 3 corners of the room, burning bright enough to bleach the color clean off the white and gold balloons tied to every chair. My granddaughter is seated at the head table wearing a yellow dress she didn't pick out, hemmed in by a wall of unopened presents she never thought to ask for. None of this night was built for her. It was built for the cameras, for the comments, for whatever version of a perfect family my son-in-law wanted the world to see. And I was the one thing in the frame that didn't fit. Welcome to Father's Silent Revenge. I'm glad you're here. And before we go any further, I'd love to know, what are you up to right now while you listen? Cooking dinner, driving somewhere, lying in bed, trying to wind down? Drop it in the comments. It means more than you know to hear from the people on the other side of this story. A quick note before we continue: some elements of this story have been shaped for audio storytelling, and any resemblance to specific real people or events is purely coincidental. What matters is the truth at the heart of it. Here I am at the fringe of this elaborately staged event, a scratched wooden box under my arm, the one that belonged to my late wife. Garland Whitaker. That's my name. 68 years old, most of them spent pulling overnight shifts as a warehouse security guard, bringing Vivian up alone after Nadine died, doing what I could to teach her that love has no need for spectators. My calloused hands tell a different story than the smooth, manicured fingers repositioning camera angles across the room. Wren Coldwell is 6 years old today. Wide eyes, soft voice, the kind of child who still takes it on faith that grown-ups tell the truth. She's wedged into a chair, twice her size, watching her mother work the room like a director on set, rather than a parent at her daughter's party. Vivian Coldwell, 38, my daughter. She repositions ring lights with the focus of someone who has always tracked success in follower counts and engagement figures. Her polished nails catch the artificial brightness as she corrects the tripod angle for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. I raised her to put substance ahead of surface. Somewhere in the years between, Decker persuaded her they were the same thing. Decker Coldwell is posted near the gift table, arms folded, 41 years old, smugness radiating off him. Expensive watch-pressed shirt. The kind of man who keeps score and dollar signs and reads humility as a deficiency in people who haven't done well enough. All right, everyone, we're starting the gift segment. Vivian's voice carries the bright, hollow cheer I've heard her rehearse in front of the bathroom mirror. Make sure you're recording. 60 guests raise their phones on cue. This is not a birthday party. It's content production. I've been watching the machinery of it grind along for the past hour. The scripted cake reveal, the staged entrance sponsor logos planted on every surface. My granddaughter's 6th birthday, filtered and monetized and sent out live to strangers who will never learn her name. I move forward carrying the wooden box, scratched oak brass latchlight in my grip. Nadine wore her wedding ring for 42 years and kept it in this box the whole time. When she died 4 years ago, she told me to pass it to whoever most needed a reminder of what real inheritance means. Grandpa Garland. Wren's face opens up the moment she sees me, unguarded, genuine joy, the only honest moment in this manufactured room. I set the box on the table in front of her. No bow, no paper. just old wood worn and scarred from actual use. Decker's laugh breaks across the room before Wren can even reach for it. You've got to be kidding me. 60 phones stay raised, capturing every second. A scratched piece of junk. His voice climbs, performance-pitched, angled, so every camera catches his contempt. This is what you bring to her birthday. This is pathetic. You're a disgrace to this family. 60 witnesses, 60 recordings. I stay exactly where I am and say nothing. There is something you need to know about Decker Coldwell. He clocks my uniform and my rough hands and concludes he has me figured out completely. He believes volume equals power. He believes making a man small in public is the same thing as defeating him. Dollar signs are his measure, and by that count I don't register. He has no idea what he just stepped into. Vivian locks up near the main camera, her practiced smile faltering. For one instant, I think she might stand up for me. Recall the man who stayed awake through every one of her childhood fevers, worked double shifts so she could finish college, held her upright when her mother died. Instead, she gives a strained laugh and says, "Let's just move on to the next gift," everyone dismissing it with a wave. Sorry about that. Not a single word in my defense. Not from my own daughter. Pastor Alton Faber is seated toward the back of the room with the kind of measured, quiet attention that most people in a crowd tend to overlook. 61 years old community church pastor with the eyes of someone who catches what people reveal when they assume no one is looking. He watches this scene with the stillness of a man filing it away carefully. We make eye contact for half a second. He gives the slightest nod. The 60 guests manage some uneasy laughter and redirect their phones toward the next package. Then Wren slides down from her chair. She's slight for 6. The yellow dress swallows her narrow shoulders. She passes the heap of expensive, glittering gifts, passes her parents already lining up the next moment for the cameras, and walks straight to me. She lifts the wooden box in both hands and holds it to her chest, the way you hold something breakable, something that counts. "I love Grandpa's gift," she says. Her voice is small and certain. "I love it." The room goes quiet. 60 phones still rolling. Vivian's mouth opens and produces nothing. Decker's face goes red. My granddaughter presses that box against herself, like it's the only solid object in a room made entirely of props. I get down slowly, old knees making their objection known, and I meet Wren's eyes. "I'm glad you like it, sweetheart." "What's inside?" she whispers. "Something important," I tell her. "But you have to keep it safe until the time is right." She nods with the gravity of a child who has just been given a real charge. She has no idea this box will shape who raises her. She has no idea her parents' behavior tonight handed me the evidence I was waiting for. She has no idea that in 5 days the orderly world around her is going to break apart. Decker mutters under his breath. Vivian grips his arm and leans in close. Pastor Alton, still at the back, draws out his phone not to film anything, but to type something into his notes. I get to my feet, brush off my trousers on reflex, and head for the exit at the unhurried pace I've maintained through 40 years of night shifts. 60 people just watched my son-in-law dress me down on camera. 60 witnesses saw my daughter hold her tongue. Not one of them has any idea what that scratched wooden box actually holds, the one my granddaughter is clutching like it's something precious. They're about to learn what it costs to read a quiet man as a beaten one. The box sits on my kitchen shelf for 5 days. Nobody inquires about its contents. Nobody offers a word of apology. Then the morning of August 22nd comes, and my phone shows 14 missed calls before the sun is up. I'm out in the warehouse lot at the end of my shift, thermos of black coffee sitting lukewarm on the passenger seat. When I play the voicemails back, my hands don't move. 40 years of security work conditions. You panic is a decision, not a reflex. Decker's voice leads tight-controlled the particular tone of a man who is furious, but working to project calm. Garland, we need you to sign some routine paperwork, estate planning stuff. Call me back today. Delete. 3 minutes later, another one. It's urgent. Call me. Delete. Vivian is on the fourth message, and beneath the sweetness, I hear something fraying. Dad, please. This is important for Ren's future. We need to discuss the box Mom's wishes. Please call me back. No apology. Only pressure wrapped around fear. The texts mirror it. Vivian sent 11 between 4 and 6 a.m. Dad, pick up. We need your signature by end of week. Mom would want you to cooperate. Last one is from Decker. Don't make this difficult. We know what's in the box. I rest the phone on the seat and finish the cold coffee. The sun breaks over the industrial park, the sky going rust-colored at the edges. Decker believes he's worked out what's in that box. Vivian thinks pulling her mother's name into it will move me. Neither of them has any grasp of what Nadine actually wanted. The fear threaded through their messages tells me everything. Whatever legal structure Nadine built has activated something they cannot navigate around without my signature. What happened at that party wasn't just social media material. It was a record. Proof of who these two people are when they've decided someone has nothing left worth taking. And now it's dawning on them that the tired old security guard might not be the easy target they assumed. I should go home and sleep. Instead, I drive to the house Nadine and I lived in for 42 years, the one I still occupy alone, and settle into the chair at the kitchen table where she used to take her morning tea. A memory comes back clear and sharp. Spring 2019. Nadine was already dying, though we were still talking around it. 70 years old, grown frat in ways that sat heavy on my chest, but her mind hadn't softened at all. Her handwritten notes were spread across this same table like plans drawn before a campaign. If Vivian can't love you when there's no money in it, she said, voice steady even as her hands trembled, she has no business controlling Ren's inheritance once you're gone. I looked at the documents she'd prepared: trust paperwork, moral clauses, conditional triggers. You want me to live as if I'm broke for 2 years. I want to give our daughter the chance to show she loves you more than your assets. Nadine set her hand on the wooden box between us. The box will tell us everything we need to know. Fail the test, and every cent in that trust flows straight to Ren. Vivian walks away with nothing, no money, no control, just supervised visitation on someone else's schedule. Nadine held my gaze and didn't flinch. Her words were steady. Better Ren grows up in the care of strangers who honor her than with a mother who treats her like a line item on a balance sheet. That's when the full picture finally came out. $2.8 million in trust assets Nadine had quietly built up across 30 years. Investment accounts she'd never mentioned. Life insurance policies with beneficiary designations she'd chosen carefully years in advance. Wealth that would flow to Ren the instant I died, unless she first crossed one of the moral tripwires Nadine had buried in the documents. Take the warehouse job, she told me. Get rid of the good car. Live small. Let them believe money was always scarce. Let them believe whatever we leave behind amounts to an old box and a handful of keepsakes. 2 years of that through the end of my life, and then 1 year more after I'm gone. Enough time for Vivian to reveal who she actually is. Then came the cough, deep and wet, and I reached over and took her hand. There's a hidden compartment in that box, she said. A letter inside. It spells out every clause, the moral conditions, who must witness the opening, what triggers disqualification. When the moment comes, You'll open it with people present who have already watched how they treat you. And what if she passes? I asked, even though neither of us believed she would. Nadine gave me a sad, quiet smile. Then I was wrong about her, and I'll find a way to apologize from the other side. If you've ever cared for someone deeply enough to let them think you were nothing just to learn whether they'd still stay, you already know the price of those 2 years. Every cutting remark Decker threw at my security guard work. Every time Vivian scrapped dinner plans, too occupied with her life to drive out and see her aging father. Every holiday where they dropped serious money on online strangers and handed me something, pulled off a clearance shelf still in the bag. Nadine passed in the spring of 2021. Vivian showed up to the funeral draped in designer black and performed her grief for anyone watching. 3 months on, she hosted Wren's 6th birthday party and stood there while Decker called me a disgrace in front of 60 people recording the whole thing. My wife had seen it coming, all of it. I pull myself back to the present. I'm sitting alone in the kitchen where Nadine used to map out her garden beds each spring. The wooden box is up on the shelf above the sink, right where she said to leave it. My phone goes off again. Another message from Vivian. Dad, please. We can't move forward without your signature. This is about Wren's security. I put the phone down beside the wooden box on the kitchen table. My fingers moved across the worn surface, searching for the seam Nadine had pointed out before she was gone. One turn of that hidden mechanism, and everything would be exposed. The letter, the clauses, the proof that their inheritance had evaporated the second Decker opened his mouth at that party. But I wasn't ready to do it yet. Let them sweat a few more days. Let them keep showing me how ugly they're capable of getting when they think money they never owned might slip away. What I hadn't yet learned was that Nadine's closest friend had already caught wind of something far darker than I'd been worrying about. She would bring me the news about the nursing home scheme 2 weeks later. But on the night of May 3rd, at midnight, standing alone in that kitchen, I was finally breaking open the envelope she'd sealed inside the hidden compartment. 3 months after Nadine died, I rotated the base of the box counterclockwise and felt the false bottom give. The envelope was there, her handwriting on the outside. Open when you're ready to see what I saw. I wasn't ready, but Vivian's texts kept piling up, and I had to understand what my wife had put into motion. The date on the letter was January 15th, 2021, 6 weeks before she passed. She'd written it in the hospital between morphine doses, plotting a dozen steps ahead. My dearest Garland, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you're asking yourself whether I had our daughter figured out. By now the box has given you your answer. Either Vivian handled it with care, or she dropped her mask in front of witnesses. I'm betting she dropped it. Lord, I hope I'm wrong. I had to set the pages down. Just breathe. 3 pages of Nadine's careful, measured handwriting laid the moral clause out with the precision of a legal brief. The wooden box was never only a test. It was a loaded spring built into trust documents she had filed away 6 months before she died. That box belonged to my grandmother, she wrote, brought across the ocean in 1907 with nothing but nerve and faith. A daughter who shows open contempt for it in public will show our granddaughter the same contempt behind closed doors. Things don't matter, but reverence for where we came from, for what it cost the people before us, to give us anything at all that matters completely. She had mapped out every ugly thing that followed. The crowd watching on their phones, the spectacle made for social media, the cruelty that wasn't impulsive but calculated. You'll know within the first year whether she loves Wren or loves what Wren represents financially. The box will answer every question. If she passes, burn this letter and let go of your doubts about her. But if she fails, if she allows her husband to mock you publicly for honoring our granddaughter with a family piece, then the trust triggers right then. Ren receives every dollar. Vivian gets nothing beyond the opportunity to prove she can parent without money attached to it. I sat with those pages for a solid hour. Nadine had been in the ground 3 months, and she already knew precisely how our daughter would behave. She had built the test around a result she considered nearly certain. The last paragraph seized my throat. I know how much this costs you. I know you were holding out hope that she'd grown into someone different. So was I. But Ren's safety outweighs Vivian's comfort. You're the one who taught me to put the child first. Now I'm asking you to see this through to the end. The box is not hollow, my love. It holds the one thing our daughter never learned, to respect the truth. Dead 3 months. And Nadine had already won. Moving from that midnight moment to what unfolded 5 weeks later felt like watching a chess match played out by someone who wasn't even alive to see her own moves land. June 10th. Vivian phoned and asked if we could meet for coffee. Her voice had that rehearsed warmth she puts on when she needs a favor. Just the 3 of us, Dad. No drama. We want to make things right. The cafe was the kind of place that signals status. White tablecloths, $19 lattes somewhere Decker could feel like he belonged. And I was meant to feel small. They were there when I walked in. Vivian pulled me into a hug like nothing had ever gone wrong between us. Decker shook my hand, squeezing hard the way men do when they want you to register who's in charge. Nobody brought up what would later become the birthday party incident, still 2 months away. We've been thinking about Ren's future, Vivian said, one hand working her almond milk latte, about locking in some security for her. Decker pushed a leather folder my direction across the table. Crisp, professional print. Embossed letterhead. The look of routine legal paperwork. Authorization to manage Ren's assets. Sign on page 3. Initial on page 7. 2 minutes of your time. I opened the folder and took my time with it. The language was dense by design, phrases like irrevocable transfer of management authority and unlimited discretion over asset deployment, tucked into paragraph 5, where most people stop reading. Then page 3 stopped me cold. Above the signature line sat a sample. Sign exactly as shown, it said. And the sample was my name written in my hand. Same slant built up over 40 years of punching time cards. Same weight on each downstroke. Same slight hook curling off the final N in Whitaker. I had never produced that signature. You know that particular cold feeling, the one when it hits you, that someone has been rehearsing how to rob you, and they're sitting across from you, smiling like old friends. Where did this sample come from? I kept every trace of emotion out of my voice. Vivian's eyes slid to Decker. Just a fraction of a second. Your signature from Mom's estate paperwork. We pulled it as a reference. That was a lie. Nadine's estate had gone through our attorney from start to finish. I'd put my name on exactly 3 documents, every one of them filed with probate court. What I was looking at was something else. It had been practiced. Traced and retraced until whoever did it had my pressure and my angle down cold. I'll have my attorney go through this before anything gets signed, I said, and shut the folder. Decker's expression clamped down. It's time sensitive. We need to file before the end of the month. Then you should have come to me sooner. I got to my feet and tucked the folder under my arm. I'll be in touch once my lawyers had a look. The color left Vivian's face. Dad, please. This matters for Ren. If it truly matters for Ren, a proper legal review won't hurt it. I left with that folder a document that amounted to evidence of fraud planned in advance, and neither one of them moved to stop me. At home, I spent 3 hours staring at that forged signature sample. What settled in my chest was not anger. It was something colder. They had practiced my handwriting enough times to reach that level of accuracy, which meant the scheme had been in motion well before the birthday party, an event that hadn't even taken place yet, which meant everything Nadine had warned me about regarding the nursing home was not fear-talking. It was foresight. 2 weeks later, Clarice would meet me at Nadine's grave and confirm every last bit of it. 2 weeks after I discovered the forged signature, I made the drive out to the cemetery to visit Nadine's grave. Clarice Dunbar was standing at my wife's headstone when I pulled up, and before she said a single word, I already knew Nadine's darkest fear had become real. Clarice was 72. Nadine's closest friend, going all the way back to grade school, a retired school teacher with steel gray hair and a posture so rigid it told you she was bearing something heavy. 40 years in a third-grade classroom. She could pick out a liar from across the room without trying. "There's something I have to tell you, something I overheard at the memorial gathering," she said, skipping any greeting. "I've been sitting on it for 3 months, but after what Decker pulled at Wren's party, staying quiet isn't something I can do anymore." The birthday party was still 2 months off at that point. Clarice was reaching back to the spring to Nadine's memorial service. I held my silence. I was in the church kitchen cleaning coffee urns. Decker and Vivian had stepped into the storage room right next door. They didn't realize I was there. Clarice's hands trembled as she spoke. "Decker said they needed you ruled incompetent before autumn. Vivian asked whether a facility could cut off your visitors. He said the right kind of place could make you completely unreachable." The cemetery held nothing but wind moving through the oak trees. Nadine's headstone read, "Beloved wife and mother, 1951 to 2021. She'd been gone 3 months when Clarice overheard that exchange. 3 months, and our daughter was already drawing up plans to lock me away somewhere. "That's not all of it," Clarice said. Vivian had already looked at 3 facilities. She had the brochures with her. Decker mentioned his cousin practices elder law and could push the guardianship paperwork through faster. I worked to keep my voice from tightening. Did they say what grounds they'd use? "Something about needing legal authority, being able to manage your assets, sign on your behalf." Clarice looked straight at me. "Garland, they weren't discussing your well-being. They were discussing taking over." Nadine had prepared me for exactly this. 2 years back in our kitchen dying, but her mind still cutting clean, she'd told me Vivian would try to have me institutionalized if she couldn't get my signature by other means. I had wanted to believe my wife was wrong about that the illness and the grief were warping her judgment. But Nadine had understood our daughter at a depth I'd refused to accept. "Thank you for coming here to tell me," I said. "Nadine would have wanted me to know this. She told me to keep watch over you." Clarice's voice broke a little. "She made me give her my word. If they ever moved against you like this, I'd tell you. I'm sorry I waited as long as I did." I drove home with Clarice's account turning over in my mind the whole way. They had been scheming since the memorial, possibly even longer. The forged signature wasn't just an act of fraud. It was the first plan. The nursing home was the fallback. 10 days after that, I was seated across from Sheldon Orvath's mahogany desk, and I finally grasped why Nadine had spent her final months constructing legal walls instead of simply saying her goodbyes. Sheldon Orvath was 54, a family trust attorney with 3 decades behind him, and the man Nadine had chosen as the legal architect of everything she'd built. He had the measured eyes of someone who has spent years watching families try to devour each other. His office smelled of leather and old books, the kind of room where decisions with real weight get made. "Your wife engineered this trust like a fortress," Sheldon said, laying documents out across the desk. "Without your voluntary cooperation or a court ruling that you're incompetent, they can't touch a dollar of it. And they're pursuing that court ruling." I walked him through what Clarice had told me, the facilities, the brochures, Decker's cousin in elder law. Sheldon gave a slow nod as though none of it came as a surprise. The trust is structured to flow solely to Ren. Your daughter and son-in-law can only obtain management rights if they demonstrate consistent respect for the family legacy and for the trustee, which is you. Public contempt triggers automatic disqualification. Define public contempt: insults, mockery, or disrespect of the trustee witnessed by third parties, or deliberate damage to sacred family property identified in the trust documents. Sheldon pressed a finger to a paragraph on the page. Your wife specifically named her grandmother's wooden box as protected heritage property. The birthday party hadn't occurred yet at that point in the timeline, but I could already see the shape of it, the way it would unfold, exactly as designed. Nadine had engineered a trap of such quiet elegance it was almost something to admire. The moral clause is fully enforceable, Sheldon went on. Once triggered, all management rights transfer to Ren's account, with you as guardian until she reaches maturity. Your daughter is left with nothing beyond supervised visitation. How long before they work out what Nadine actually built? They may never grasp the full mechanism. Most people scan trust documents for dollar amounts and assume there's always a door they can push open. Sheldon leaned back. But there is a hard deadline, December 20th, 2022. Every legal structure has to be locked in before Ren turns 7. After that date, the trust becomes irrevocable no matter what anyone does. Here's what you need to understand about a fortress trust. It isn't built to hold money in. It's built to keep the wrong people out. What about the guardianship move, I asked. Sheldon's face shifted. That's the matter I most needed to raise with you. He drew a thin file from his desk drawer. I have a standing alert with the county clerk's office for any filings connected to our clients. This landed on my desk yesterday. He pushed the file across to me. County clerk records. Preliminary guardianship inquiry forms filed under Vivian Coldwell's name. Dated June 8th, 2 days before she'd called me to that cafe with the forged signature documents waiting inside a leather folder. They filed this before they ever sat down with me, I said slowly. They had already launched the legal attack before they even tried to get your signature willingly. Sheldon's tone was grim. The inquiry cites an expedited competency evaluation. It references your age, a supposed decline in your mental state, and concerns about your capacity to manage assets. I'm 68, and I pull night shifts at a warehouse. My mind is sharp, I know that. But they are constructing a story. The inquiry notes that you gave away a worthless box as a birthday gift, which they frame as evidence of poor judgment. That birthday party was still 6 weeks out when they filed that paperwork. They had been building the case to use my gift against me before I'd even wrapped it. They had opened this war in secret. I was going to close it in front of everyone. What I didn't yet know was that Decker's accountant had been keeping records of everything. 3 weeks after Sheldon showed me those guardianship filings, a call came in from an unknown number at 2:47 in the morning, and the man on the other end sounded like he was speaking from inside a confessional. I was parked in my truck in the warehouse lot, thermos of black coffee sitting lukewarm on the passenger seat, when my phone lit up. Unknown caller. I almost let it ring out. Mr. Whitaker. The voice was male, hushed and afraid. This is Burl Canfield. I'm Decker's accountant. I need to talk, but I can't stay on long. I'm in a parking lot and I can't be sure who might be watching. Burl Canfield was 43, carrying the kind of dark circles that come from knowing too much and being unable to act on it. I'd encountered him once at a family event, hovering near the walls, looking like a man who had been cataloging wrongdoing he couldn't risk exposing. Tonight he was calling from somewhere dark, out of view. What's this about? I kept my tone steady. I've been handling his books for 3 years. Burl's words tumbled out barely above a whisper. The numbers have never added up. False financial statements, debts he keeps, buried transactions that vanish and reappear under different names. What's his total exposure? 6 figures, maybe beyond that. New creditors keep surfacing every month. Burrell's breathing was unsteady. He owes people not the kind you take to court, the kind who collect others' ways. And he keeps coming back to one thing. Ren's trust is the answer. He keeps saying once he gets control of those assets, everything gets fixed. My chest went cold. What exactly does he say about Ren's trust? That it's substantial. That you're the only thing standing between him and it. That once you're out of the picture, his words, not mine, he'll have the authority to restructure how the funds are distributed. Burrell paused. Mr. Whitaker, I think he's moving towards something serious and I can't be any part of it. What's on the USB drive? Silence 3 full seconds. How did you called me at 3:00 in the morning from a parking lot. You don't make a call like this without something to back it up. Burrell exhaled, shaky. Bank statements, email threads, loan applications bearing forged signatures, 3 years of material documenting systematic fraud. I've been holding copies because I always knew this would eventually detonate, and I refused to go down alongside him. Where is the drive right now? Somewhere safe, hidden. I'll reach out after the party after he makes his move. You're going to need this. Burrell's voice fell even lower. Keep your eyes on him, Mr. Whitaker. He's underwater, and a drowning man will drag anyone down if it means he survives. The call ended. I sat in that truck for a solid hour and watched daylight crawl up over the industrial park, turning over every word Burrell had just said. Decker wasn't merely greedy, he was cornered. And cornered men are the most dangerous kind. 2 weeks between that frightened phone call and the morning I walked through my daughter's front door and saw exactly what she had allowed herself to become. August 12th. 5 days before Ren's 6th birthday party, Vivian had asked me to come by early and help with setup. I should have known what I was walking into. The house hadn't been transformed into anything resembling a child's celebration. It was a production set. Ring lights on tripods in 3 corners of the living room, 2 cameras locked on fixed mounts, a third riding a motorized gimbal, white reflector screens, angled to throw light onto the gift opening area. I stood in the doorway, and Vivian didn't register that I'd come in. She was fussing with a ring light, checking angles on her phone screen, while Decker stood behind her, holding a clipboard. When your dad hands over his gift, Decker was saying, make sure camera 2 is on your face. The contrast is going to land perfectly. Old man gives garbage-loving daughter, tries to hide her embarrassment. That's the shot we need. Vivian tilted her head. Should I play it embarrassed or sympathetic? Sympathetic, more shareable. Make it look like you feel for him, like you're trying to shield Ren from how sad it all is. I stepped into the room. They both spun around. Dad. Vivian's voice shot up 3 octaves into manufactured warmth. You're here early. We're just getting some cameras positioned. You know how everybody is these days. Nobody goes anywhere without documenting it. Looks like more than a few family photos, I said. Decker's smile slid into place without effort. We're growing a family brand. Sponsorships, social partnerships. Ren's birthday makes for great content, wholesome, genuine, real. I looked at the wall behind them. A printed schedule taped up like a film shoot's call sheet. 7:00 guests arrive. 7:10 gift segment. Dad's box, camera 2 tight on Vivian's reaction. 7:25 cake. 7:45 sponsored segment. They weren't throwing Ren a birthday party. They were shooting an episode, and I was the fool they'd written into the script. You want to know the precise moment I stopped seeing Vivian as my daughter and began seeing her the way Nadine had always seen her, as a test that was running. It was when I found the notes taped to her refrigerator. Gift segment notes framed Dad as well-meaning but out of touch. His financial situation shows in his choices. Generate sympathy for us as young parents navigating difficult family dynamics. Do not let Dad's gift disrupt the positive energy. Redirect quickly to premium sponsors. My own daughter had written stage directions for my humiliation. "We need to keep moving," Decker said, glancing at his watch. "Still have to get the dessert table sorted. Thanks for stopping by early, Garland. We'll see you tonight." They wanted me out of there, needed me gone so they could finish building their set in peace. I left without pushing back, drove home and sat down at the kitchen table, eyes on the wooden box resting on the shelf. Nadine had known. She'd seen exactly who they were. She'd known they would reduce Wren's childhood to content and turn my love into punchlines. She'd known they'd film my humiliation and package it as heartwarming family drama, and she had constructed the perfect mechanism for precisely this kind of moment. I stood there in memory, ring lights still glinting off the metallic birthday banner, and I made up my mind. I would bring the wooden box to Wren's party. I would let every camera roll. I would hand Decker the villain performance he'd staged, because what they couldn't know, what they had no way of knowing, was that every lens they pointed at me was a witness I'd be calling on later. Let them capture my humiliation in 4K. Nadine had built the trap. Now I was going to spring it. 5 days before the party, they had made one final miscalculation. It happened on August 12th when they let me walk far enough into that house to read the production schedule taped to the refrigerator. The moment those words, framed Dad as well-meaning but out of touch, went into my eyes, I got in my car and drove straight to Sheldon Orvath's office and signed documents of my own. Now 5 days on the wooden box rode on my passenger seat like a loaded weapon. Pulling into my daughter's driveway the morning of Wren's 6th birthday, the dashboard clock read 10:20. The party wasn't until 6:00 in the evening. I'd come early because Wren had asked to see her gift before the guests showed up. At least that's what Vivian's text had said. Decker was at the front door before I'd even killed the engine. "Garland, good. We need to talk." No hello, no smile, just urgency wearing a thin mask of composure. "Come inside. This won't take long." The dining room table was buried under paperwork, professional printing, legal letterhead documents, spread across the surface like an evidence display. Vivian materialized from the kitchen with a coffee cup, wearing the kind of worried expression that takes practice to get right. "Dad, we know your time is valuable, but this genuinely can't be put off any longer. We need a few signatures before the party gets underway. Signatures for what I stayed on my feet." Decker waved a hand toward the pile with the ease of a man used to being in charge. Estate planning, beneficiary updates, routine housekeeping that should have been dealt with months ago. "Your attorney probably flagged it." My attorney hadn't flagged anything. My attorney had spent the previous afternoon making sure that even if I signed every page on that table, each document would be worthless. I lifted the first page and worked through the dense legal language written to fog rather than illuminate. Found what I was looking for on page 7, paragraph 3. Petitioner requests emergency guardianship authority over Garland Whitaker, age 68, due to demonstrated diminished capacity and inability to manage financial affairs independently. These weren't estate papers. They were asking me to sign away my own autonomy. "At your stage of life, these things really do need to be squared away," Vivian said, her voice coated in that practiced, honeyed concern. "We're just trying to make sure everyone is protected, especially you." "Protected from what?" Decker's smile pulled tight. "From choices that might not serve your best interests. From people who could take advantage of your circumstances, your financial situation, your living arrangement, your age." Decker came forward and let the friendly act drop entirely. "You sign these this morning, or we move to other methods. That's the choice, but you need to decide quickly. Guests are at 6. The meaning was unmistakable. Sign now and keep it looking voluntary, or they'd go through the courts and take it by force. They wanted my cooperation to make it appear clean, like I'd handed over control of my own life with a clear head and a steady hand. I need to go through this carefully, I said. Have my attorney look it over first. There's no window for that. Decker pressed a finger to his watch. This offer has an expiration. Sign now or it disappears. I set the papers back down without rushing. I'll need some time to consider it. Consider quickly. Decker's voice dropped its warmth entirely. One way or another, this gets done today. I walked out to the backyard before either of them could cut me off. The August heat pressed down hard, but I needed to breathe air that wasn't thick with the smell of manufactured legal paperwork. 4 hours passed between that ambush at the dining room table and the moment my granddaughter climbed into my lap. I spent every one of those minutes reminding myself exactly why I was here. By 2:00 in the afternoon, I was on the patio bench alone watching clouds move overhead when I caught the sound of small feet on the deck. Wren came around the corner in her yellow birthday dress, the one they'd chosen for the cameras. 6 years old, eyes wide and trusting, the kind of trust that aches because you understand how easily it can be broken. Grandpa. Her voice was barely above a murmur. How come you're out here all by yourself, just doing some thinking, sweetheart? She pulled herself up into my lap the way young children do. No hesitation, no asking, the absolute certainty that they are welcome. Her small hands drifted to the wooden box sitting beside me on the bench. Is this what you got me? It is. Can I look inside right now? We'll open it at the party when everyone's there, I told her. She ran her fingers along the worn wood gently with real curiosity. Then she lifted her eyes to mine and said, Don't be sad, Grandpa. It's my birthday, and you're here. My throat clamped shut. Mommy said you might have to go away soon. Wren's voice dropped to a whisper, the way children speak when they're carrying something too heavy for them. But you won't write. You'll still be there for my school plays and my soccer games. There is a very specific kind of anger that rises in you when a 6-year-old is trying to comfort you because she's frightened you're going to be taken out of her life. She had heard them. This child had been in earshot while her parents laid out their plans to remove me. And still she loved me. Still she trusted me. Still she believed I would look after her, even after overhearing them say I was leaving. I'm not going anywhere, I told her. I promise. Good. She pressed the wooden box against her chest. Because I would miss you too much. I sat with her in that afternoon heat, her small heartbeat steady against my arm, and understood completely what Nadine had grasped all along. Vivian and Decker didn't look at Wren and see a child. They saw content. They saw a key to money. They saw something to hold over me. But Wren was a person, a small one with fears and feelings, and a voice that whispered secrets about being scared. Her grandfather was going to disappear. I would tear down everything I had before I let them use this little girl as a bargaining chip. My phone went off in my pocket. A text from Decker. We lock it down tonight. I looked at Wren, still holding the wooden box, her birthday dress already creased from sitting in my lap. He thought that was a threat. What Decker didn't know was that I'd put my name on a very different piece of paper with Sheldon Orvath the day before, an emergency protective order locking every trust asset in place while suspected fraud was investigated. Each signature he'd pressured me toward that morning was worthless before the ink dried. That money was somewhere he couldn't touch. Tonight, 60 people and a wall of cameras would watch him reach for it anyway. I'd stand there and take it when he called me a disgrace. I'd absorb the humiliation of giving my granddaughter a battered wooden box. Every insult he threw would be another length of cord around his own neck. But before any of that, I had to hear what Pastor Alton had caught wind of. I tracked him down in the Harborview Banquet Hall parking lot at 6:15 before I needed to go inside. His sedan was idling with the windows rolled down, and the moment he spotted me coming across the asphalt, he climbed out and said nothing. "You need to know what I heard," he said, voice barely above a murmur. No softening, no small talk, only the facts offered by someone who'd spent decades learning to identify rot, hiding beneath a respectable surface. By the time I walked through the banquet hall doors at 6:30, the place was already alive with caterers and coordinators. The wooden box in its plain gray wrapping was tucked under one arm, and Alton's words were drilling into the back of my skull. He'd arrived well ahead of schedule to pitch in with the setup. That was simply who he was. With church families, a man who gave the kind of help that went unnoticed, right up until it disappeared. Sometime around 6:45, he'd passed the event coordinator's office. The door hadn't been pulled all the way shut. He heard every word. Decker's voice, unhurried, stripped of any warmth. "Once he signs, get him to the home immediately. Transport is scheduled for 11 p.m. Then Vivian edged with anxiety, but moving forward anyway. "What do we tell Wren? That grandpa got sick. She's 6. She'll believe it." Alton had gone completely still in that corridor, absorbing the fact that my daughter and her husband were mapping out my removal the way you'd schedule a pickup. Transport at 11 p.m. Someone was already on retainer to come for me. This had moved well past threat. It was logistics. A hard time on a hard schedule. Out in that parking lot, Alton told me the cameras were already live. Ring lights erected 2 cameras capturing the hall before a single guest had walked in. Whatever they intended to pull off tonight, they were building a record of it. "They wanted to go viral," I said. Alton's jaw went tight. "I can call the police this minute. Elder abuse conspiracy, attempted kidnapping. I was standing right there." "No." I switched the wooden box to my other arm. "Let them move. Let them film every moment of it. The witnesses I need are going to see exactly what these people are." Or Garland. The name came out low, almost a warning. "Trust me, Alton." Nadine understood what she built. He held my gaze for several seconds before something settled behind his eyes. "I'll be watching. If something goes sideways, it won't, but thank you." Inside now, I waded through the swelling crowd with that gray-wrapped box pressed against my ribs. The Harborview Banquet Hall smells like buttercream frosting and expensive cologne, white and gold balloons tied to every chair ring, lights staked into 3 corners, just as I'd clocked them on my earlier walkthrough. Both cameras were live, their red indicators burning steadily. The gap between Alton catching their scheme and me setting the box on the gift table 20 minutes had the quality of watching a row of dominoes tip toward each other in perfect sequence. Every element landing exactly where Nadine had mapped it out. Show 5. I came up on the gift table buried under a mountain of glossy packages, Disney princesses, glittery handled bags, bows the size of hubcaps. Everything there had been chosen to impress, paid for to signal status, and would be forgotten inside a week. I placed the gray paper-wrapped box in the middle of it all. Unadorned, unpretentious, chosen deliberately to disappear. A woman nearby, an aunt of someone's I gathered, radiating too much perfume and the particular alertness of a person who feeds on social friction, fixed me with a look of manufactured curiosity. "That one's a bit of an odd duck compared to the rest," she observed, studying the bare wrapping. "What's inside?" "Something that came down from my late wife's grandmother." I answered, pitching it so the cluster of nearby guests could catch it. "A piece that stayed in the family." "Oh." The pity that moved into her voice was immediate. "How lovely." A man drifted over collared polo, the particular ease of someone who lunched with Decker regularly. Heirloom can't put a number on that, so Nadine's family carried it for 3 generations. I said, drawing my thumb along the box's edge right over the seam so faint you'd miss it if you weren't looking. Crossed the ocean in 1907. Nothing else to their name but nerve and hope. There are things that outlast any price tag. The woman's attention had already begun to wander. The man offered an awkward smile and found somewhere else to be. It didn't matter. They'd absorbed the story. They'd become, without knowing it, the first witnesses to what that box represented. There's a particular craft to constructing a trap that presents itself as a gift. The mechanism only works if it looks like nothing at all, plain enough that someone contemptuous walks straight into it without hesitating. I pressed my thumb along that seam a final time. The spot Nadine had shown me, the point where 1/4 turn counterclockwise and steady pressure against the brass corner would free the false bottom and the brass key waiting inside it. Not yet. Let them lay eyes on it. Let them write it off. Let every camera catch what followed. I pulled back from the table and read the room. 60 guests drifting in clusters, the bulk of them people Decker and Vivian had assembled for their follower count, rather than any affection for Wren. Alton had taken a position at the back wall collar, visible above the crowd, gaze moving with quiet precision. The cameras sat on their mounts, those red lights pulsing slow, like something patient waiting to strike. Vivian hovered near the cake table, tilting her phone at the ring light, measuring angles. She looked up, caught me watching, and delivered the smile she kept in reserve for when a lens might be pointed her way. I didn't return it. Then Decker stepped out of the coordinator's office, the very room where Alton had listened to him book my ride to the nursing home. He had the guardianship papers from that morning tucked inside a leather folder ready. His eyes moved across the room the way a man's do when he's looking for the moment to strike, and they snagged on the gift table. I watched the calculation run across his face as he clocked the gray-wrapped parcel sitting among all those expensive offerings. First confusion, he'd been in the room when I packaged it, had watched me lug it through the door. Then recognition. Then something uglier underneath both of those, pure, unguarded contempt for the worn-out security guard who'd handed his daughter a piece of junk while every other guest brought something with a real price tag. From across the room, Alton caught my eye. One small nod. He'd heard it all, and he was here. The cameras were recording. The room was filling up. And Decker Coldwell was cutting a line straight toward the wooden box that was going to take him apart. His fingers moved toward the gray paper face already set in the expression of a man steeling himself to be publicly disappointed. He'd planned to crack it open before Wren could get near it, stage the dismissal himself. Make sure the crowd had a front-row view of what the old man had dragged in. Nadine had seen this coming. She'd built the moral clause into the trust with this exact reflex in mind. She knew Decker couldn't throttle the urge to perform his disdain when an audience was available. Everything that followed would be taken from 6 separate angles. His hand hovered over the gray paper, and then pulled back. Vivian materialized at his side, her voice too low for me to catch. A small shake of her head, a glance in Wren's direction. He understood. They'd let the script run as written. When Wren brought that gray-wrapped box across the room to me, 60 guests watching, 6 cameras rolling, her parents holding their curated expressions in place, I understood that the next 3 minutes were going to settle everything. Grandpa. Pure and uncomplicated the way only a child's voice can be. 6 years old in a yellow birthday dress, holding my gift against her chest, like she'd already determined it was something worth protecting. Can I open this one first? Of course, sweetheart. I got down to her level, both knees reminding me of my age. It's all yours. She went at the gray paper the way children do. No ceremony, nothing held back. and the scratched oak box emerged from the wrapping. Her fingers moved over the surface, drawn to the grain and the wear in it. "It's pretty," she whispered. Then Decker moved in. I'd watched him command a room before holidays, church socials, any situation where people were paying attention. This was a different animal. This was theater built for distribution, engineered to clip and caption and stack up views. He found the angle where camera 2 would take his face clean, threw enough volume behind his voice to feed the microphone Vivian had tucked into the table arrangement, and let the contempt he'd been sitting on all evening rise fully to the surface, the kind that photographs well and plays even better in slow motion. "What is this?" He took the box straight from Wren's hands and raised it toward the light like he was introducing Exhibit A. A scratched piece of junk. The room contracted. 60 people went silent between one breath and the next. "This is what you bring to my daughter's birthday." His voice had no trouble reaching the walls. "To a party where every other person showed up with something real. This is pathetic." A quarter turn toward camera 3. "You're a disgrace to this family, Garland. A disgrace." I stood and watched my son-in-law come apart in front of his own evidence, and what I felt wasn't anger or satisfaction. It was the cold, settled certainty that Nadine had called every beat of this, the positioning, the words, the angles. His contempt was being logged from 6 directions, simultaneously, every curl of the lip locked into high definition, every syllable banked as exactly the material Sheldon Orvath would need the moment Nadine's moral clause was entered into the record. Vivian stood motionless near the cake table, her rehearsed composure flickering between embarrassment and rapid calculation. For a single beat, I thought she might speak up for me, might recall the man who'd raised her on his own after her mother was gone, might reach back for some remnant of the daughter I'd known. Instead, she cut a glance at camera 2, repositioned herself a half step for better framing, and delivered her line wrapped in hollow sympathy. "Dad, maybe we should let's move on to the next gift, everyone." A small, mournful smile for the lens. A pause. "You know how he is." Not a syllable in my corner, only camera angles and crowd control. Wren's eyes moved between her parents and me, something uncertain clouding her face. "But Grandpa said it's special." "It's garbage, sweetheart." Decker put the box down on the gift table with more force than necessary. "Just old garbage from someone who doesn't know better." The room shifted. Some guests looked elsewhere. Others lifted their phones higher, making certain they didn't miss a frame of this. This was what they'd actually come for, drama wearing a party dress. Alton held his spot near the back wall, expression carefully blank, but those eyes of his didn't miss anything. I caught the movement as his hand went into his jacket pocket, the subtle angle as he turned his phone toward the scene. A 7th camera Decker had no idea existed, an independent record of everything unfolding. There's a particular quality to the silence that falls over 60 people when they collectively understand they're watching cruelty dressed up as content. It's not a gasp exactly, more like the whole room holding its breath at once. A woman up near the front, someone's mother, possibly. Someone's grandmother, made a quiet sound of disapproval. The man beside her pressed a hand to her arm and gave a small shake of his head. "Not your place. Don't step in. Let the cameras keep running." Decker soaked it up, drawing energy from the discomfort he'd engineered. This was his moment, the viral payoff, the poor, aging father-in-law made small in front of everyone. The young, successful father standing firm for his daughter against inadequate offerings and obsolete relatives. He'd worked out every variable except one. Wren walked past her father, past her mother adjusting ring lights, past 60 guests with their phones in the air. She lifted the wooden box from where Decker had dropped it on the gift table, wrapping both small hands around it, with the deliberate care of someone handling something valuable. She looked up at me, those 6-year-old eyes still carrying the belief that the adults in her life told the truth, and that love counted for more than whatever anything cost. Then she turned to face the room. "I love Grandpa's gift," she said, small voice, no wavering in it. "I love it." Every camera caught what followed. The way she drew that scratched wooden box in close against her yellow dress. The set of her jaw. The way she walked right through her father's performance, as though it simply wasn't there, led by something he couldn't script or redirect. Decker's face broke. Anger moved across it before he could pull it back, raw fury that his own daughter had stepped outside his frame, that a 6-year-old's unmanaged honesty had derailed what he'd carefully arranged. Camera 2 logged it all in sharp focus. Vivian stepped forward, mouth already opening to pivot to salvage the moment to bring the narrative back to something usable, but Ren was already crossing toward me. The box clutched to her chest with both hands, her voice landing a second time through the quiet of the room. "I love it." 6 cameras recorded her small act of defiance. 60 witnesses watched Decker's composure crack at being outmaneuvered by genuine feeling inside his manufactured production. And Pastor Alton stood in the corner phone, angled with care, capturing the whole scene from the 7th position Decker hadn't accounted for. Nadine's trap had just sprung, and a 6-year-old's honesty was what tripped the wire. The wooden box, Nadine's grandmother's heirloom, carried across an ocean in 1907, sat cradled against Ren's chest after being publicly scorned by the man maneuvering to seize control of the family trust, while cameras documented every second. Public contempt shown to the sacred family heirloom confirmed. Trustee subjected to public humiliation confirmed. Multiple independent witnesses capturing the moral disqualification as it happened confirmed. Every piece Nadine had engineered into that trust clause preserved from 7 different angles. But the box still had one more thing to give up. Ren's fierce loyalty had been its first revelation. The real secret was still inside that scratched oak, waiting for precisely the right kind of force to release it. What happened in the following 60 seconds would get replayed across social media 10,000 times, picked apart, frame by frame. But standing there inside it, the whole thing had the quality of watching a collision arrive in slow motion. Ren stood holding the wooden box against her yellow birthday dress, her small declaration still hanging in the air of the silent banquet hall. "I love it." 2 words that had just dismantled everything Decker had built. His face twisted, not the staged displeasure he'd performed when mocking the gift. This was genuine rage. Rage at being contradicted by his own daughter, at losing his grip on the content, at having his authority openly challenged before 60 people and 6 cameras. "Give me that," he snapped, grabbing for the box. Ren pulled back, baffled. "But it's mine." Decker's hand shot out and knocked the wooden box from her grip. The crack of his palm against the wood cut through the room like something breaking. Ren's sharp intake of breath. The collective flinch from 60 guests who'd just watched a grown man violently swat a gift out of a small child's hands. The box sailed 3 feet and hit the hardwood floor with a sound like a gunshot, and something inside it clicked. Time seemed to elongate. I watched the box skid across the floor and come to rest near the gift table. Watched a concealed panel on the side release with clean mechanical precision. Watched 2 objects spill out onto the polished wood. A small black USB drive, unassuming, ordinary-looking. A brass key, worn with age, the kind cut for safety deposit boxes. The room locked up. Someone gasped. "Did you see that there was something hidden in there?" Another voice, louder. "He just knocked it straight out of that little girl's hands." "Someone's getting this right." All 6 cameras had recorded it without interruption. The violence of Decker's strike, the box hitting the floor, the concealed compartment releasing exactly as Nadine had designed it to, the thud of that box on the hardwood, the click of the mechanism. 60 people drawing breath at once. That's what a family sounds like when it breaks itself apart on camera. Decker stared at the USB drive and the brass key as though they might go off. His expression cycled rage to shock to something edging close to panic in under 3 seconds. Vivian saw them too. Her eyes went wide. She moved one step, then another, accelerating toward where the objects had landed. "Don't!" Decker started, but Vivian was already lunging, and Wren was faster. "Don't touch my gift!" It came from somewhere deep in her 6-year-old chest, absolute ferocious. She threw herself between her mother and the USB drive, small body forming a wall, defending with the kind of unthinking protective instinct that children have when they sense something has gone badly wrong. Nobody touches it. Vivian pulled up short, one hand, still reaching disbelief crossing her face at being blocked by her own daughter. "Wren, move." The practiced sweetness was completely gone from Vivian's voice. Nothing left but command. "Mommy needs to see it." Wren planted her feet and spread her arms wide. "It's mine. Grandpa gave it to me." The reversal was total. The child standing guard over the elder against her own parents, holding the line with more raw courage than any adult in that room had managed. My 6-year-old granddaughter placed herself between her mother and those 2 small objects, like she was holding a position. And I had never been more terrified or more proud in my life. Decker came forward, his face gone dark. "On. Wren, get out of the way. Step back from my granddaughter." My voice moved through the tent the way a blade does not raised, not heated, just carrying absolute certainty. "Now." 60 pairs of eyes shifted toward me. Alton's phone was still up, still recording. The mounted cameras kept running, taking down everything. I walked forward at an even pace, deliberate. Decker and Vivian both gave ground instinctively as I came, opening a path without meaning to. Wren was shaking when I reached her, holding herself together, trying to stand guard over me. But she was 6 years old, and her parents had just become people she didn't recognize. I lowered myself down on both knees, feeling the protest in every joint, and set one hand gently on her shoulder. "It's okay, sweetheart. I've got it now." "They tried to take it," she whispered, tears moving down her face. "They tried to take your present." "I know, but you held them off. You were so brave." I picked up the USB drive first, small plain, holding whatever Nadine had recorded in the months before she died. Then the brass key safety deposit box number 312 at Heritage Federal Bank, the one Nadine had opened 6 months before her death, without a word to Vivian or Decker. The wooden box lay on its side, the hidden compartment still open to the room. Nadine's engineering had been exact. The mechanism responded to a specific combination of impact force and angle, not enough to trigger from ordinary handling, but calibrated precisely to release when the box was dropped or struck with violence. She had built it to give up its secrets only through their contempt. I got to my feet, slowly, the USB drive and brass key resting in my palm. Wren pressed against my leg and still shaking. The silence inside that banquet hall was total. A woman near the front, a grandmother by the look of her, someone who'd witnessed enough harm to know it on sight, broke the quiet. That man just assaulted his own child to get at her birthday gift. Her voice carried the cold weight of judgment. I saw it. We all saw it. Agreement moved through the crowd in murmurs. Phones stayed up. The camera lights kept burning red. Decker's face had gone the color of chalk. The full shape of what had just happened was landing on him now. Not only the public spectacle of the gift, not only the moral clause violation, but a documented act of violence against a child. Assault captured from 7 separate angles. Vivian stood frozen with one hand still reaching toward the spot where the USB had been. Whatever performance she'd been running had collapsed entirely. Alton's phone was level in his hand recording angle held to take in everything. The box had surrendered its first secret. What had been dismissed as worthless junk was in fact a security device engineered to safeguard valuable evidence until the precise moment their own violence set it loose. But the contents of that USB drive were where the real revelation lived, and they were about to discover that I'd been aware of it the whole time. Nadine had captured something during her final months, something significant enough to conceal something worth constructing an entire moral trap to protect. 2 days on, they would understand what she'd actually laid down. I slipped the USB drive and brass key into my jacket pocket, while Wren pressed close against my leg, still trembling from watching what her father had done. The guests were already sharing footage between their phones. What Nadine had recorded would keep until I was somewhere quiet, but I didn't have long to wait before I learned what else she'd set in motion. 48 hours after the party, Burl Canfield's encrypted email landed at 3:47 in the morning, subject line reading, "Everything you need to bury him." I was sitting in my truck in the warehouse parking lot, thermos of black coffee sitting lukewarm on the passenger seat, when my phone lit up with it. The message had been routed through 3 proxy servers and locked with a password, the kind of precaution taken by someone who feared what would happen if they were discovered. The password came through in a follow-up text. "Nadine told me you'd know the year she carried the box across the ocean. 1907. Her grandmother's crossing to America. The files opened the way a bomb goes off slowly and then all at once. 3 years of Decker's financial crimes documented with forensic precision. Bank records showing cash movements into offshore accounts. Loan applications bearing forged signatures. My own signature practiced until it was nearly indistinguishable from the real thing. Contracts with backdated revisions. A complete money trail accounting for $340,000 in gambling debts owed to creditors whose names made my blood go cold." Burl's covering email was short and frightened. "I've kept records for 3 years. Signature forgeries, false statements, cash routed to offshore accounts. He's $340,000 in the hole to people who don't take IOUs. The trust fund is his only way out. He told me last week that if he doesn't get access by end of year, he's dead anyway, so he might as well take you down with him." A follow-up text came through while I was still working through the evidence. "The guardianship petition is already drafted. He's filing within 30 days unless you stop him first. I can't be part of this publicly. They'll kill me. But you have what you need. Nadine knew you would. Nadine knew." I sat in that truck for a solid hour reading through Burl's files, understanding with absolute clarity what my wife had set in motion. The USB from the party was the trigger proof of her final wishes, her voice arriving from somewhere past death. But Burl's files were the weapon. 3 years of evidence gathered at Nadine's direction, held back in reserve for the precise moment I'd need it most. She had turned Decker's own accountant into a witness against him. Had persuaded Burl to hold copies of everything to watch and wait and keep recording. Had built not just a legal trap, but an evidence fortress that could withstand any courtroom. Nadine's USB was the bait. Burl's files were the weapon. She'd known I would need both. I forwarded everything to Sheldon Orvath with one line: "We need to meet today." 2 weeks passed between Burl's encrypted confession and Sheldon's confirmation. And with each day I understood more clearly that Nadine had been playing chess, while the rest of us were still figuring out the board. September 2nd. Sheldon's office smelled of leather and aged paper, the kind of room where serious people arrived with serious intentions. He'd spent the previous 14 days going through every document Burl had sent, cross-referencing them against Nadine's trust structure, assembling a case tight enough to survive any challenge. The party footage activated Nadine's clause perfectly, Sheldon said, spreading the documents across his mahogany desk. Public contempt for the family heirloom equals automatic forfeiture of management rights. We have 60 witnesses, 7 camera angles, and documented violence against a minor. They could not have disqualified themselves more completely if they had planned it. How locked is the trust? Irrevocable. The money flows solely to Wren. They cannot touch or manage those funds without meeting strict behavioral conditions, demonstrated public respect for the trustee, a proven commitment to family legacy, and a clean record on financial misconduct. Sheldon tapped the stack of documents from Burl. They violated every single condition multiple times on camera. So it's over. Oh, not even close. Sheldon's face was grave. We have 15 months until the December 20th, 2022 deadline. All legal structures must be finalized before Wren turns 7. After that date, the trust locks permanently, regardless of anything else that happens. Why did Nadine build in that deadline? Because she calculated exactly how long it would take for their desperation to force them into criminal conduct that would permanently disqualify them. Sheldon leaned back. She didn't simply want them to fail the moral test. She wanted them to demolish themselves publicly, completely, with no road back. There's a particular feeling that comes when you understand that someone loved you enough to spend their last months constructing walls you'd need long after they were gone. Nadine had been lying in a hospital bed with morphine in her IV, and she had been mapping legal timelines and forecasting behavior, setting deadlines, lining up witnesses, raising a fortress designed to shield Wren from her own parents. They'll fight this, I said, with everything they've got. Sheldon pulled out a calendar covered in dates marked in red. Late 2022 is where this ends. Between now and December 20th, they'll escalate lawsuits, smear campaigns, possibly worse. Nadine anticipated every move. The question is whether you're prepared to watch your own daughter tear herself apart, trying to steal from her child. I thought about Wren at the party throwing her small body between her mother and the USB drive. Thought about that little voice saying, "I love it," straight to her father's contempt. Thought about Nadine in that hospital room, writing letters and calibrating mechanisms, and standing guard over a granddaughter she wouldn't live to see turn 7. I've been ready since the day I married Nadine, I said. Sheldon closed the file and held my gaze. Then understand what's coming. They'll come at you with everything they have: character assassination, false accusations. They'll paint you as abusive, unstable, a manipulator. They'll work to turn every witness against you. They'll take Wren's love for you and call it evidence of your manipulation. Let them try, and when the lawsuits arrive, and they will, you cannot flinch, cannot negotiate, cannot show mercy simply because Vivian is your daughter. Nadine built this fortress to protect Wren. You have to be willing to hold it, even if holding it means losing your relationship with Vivian for good. I reached into my pocket and felt the brass key from the party, the one that would open safety deposit box number 312 at Heritage Federal Bank. Inside that box was Nadine's final letter. The one she had told me to read when the real war began. Late 2022, I said. Final battleground, 15 months. What I had not anticipated was how quickly they would move. 8 days. That's all it took from Sheldon's warning before the first strike landed. The first edited video appeared on social media at 9:47 in the morning on September 10th, with 847 views. By noon, it had reached 340,000 and was carrying a headline that read, Toxic grandfather ruins child's birthday party. I was sitting in my truck on a warehouse break when Clarice Dunbar sent me the link with a single message. You need to see this. The video opened on me walking into the banquet hall with the gray-wrapped box in hand. Clean cut, no context, just an old man arriving with what looked like a threadbare gift. Vivian's voiceover sweet and wounded. My father showed up uninvited to my daughter's 6th birthday. A lie. I had the invitation text saved on my phone. The footage then cut to me presenting the box to Ren, another clean edit excising the moment just before it. The burst of joy on her face when she first saw me. In its place, it simply looked like an old man pressing an unwanted object on a baffled child. Then Decker's voice edited to land as protective. We tried to be polite, but he insisted on giving her this object. The box being opened, the scratched wood laid bare. Cut to Decker's disgust, but edited clean of his violence, his preening for the cameras, his calculated cruelty. Reframed, it read as reasonable disappointment in a genuinely worthless present. He brought junk to a 6-year-old's birthday. Vivian's voiceover pressed on. We're heartbroken. We're seeking legal help to protect Ren from this kind of instability. The video closed on a caption in white text over a freeze frame of Ren crying. Family seeking guardianship to protect vulnerable granddaughter. Family first. Elder abuse. Every edit was a fabrication. Every cut stripped out their violence. Every frame was engineered to make me appear unhinged and them appear caring. And every time it was shared, it became another count of defamation. The comment section flooded within hours. That poor baby, she looks terrified. Thank God you're getting him away from her. Elder abuse goes both ways. Sometimes the elder is the one doing it. But then something shifted. Around 2:00 in the afternoon, a different current moved through the comments. Anyone else catching those jump cuts? That edit at 0:47 drops at least 10 seconds. Why does the audio cut out when the dad is shouting, Media Probe 91 dropped a forensic breakdown at 4:00 p.m. cataloging every edit point, every excised frame, every manipulation. Within 3 hours, it was pulling more views than the original. This is coordinated defamation. Media Probe 91's analysis concluded. Strategic editing to strip context and manufacture a false narrative. Notice how the sound disappears at the critical moments. That's not a technical glitch. That's deliberate deception. The tide turned. Comment sections filled with people naming the manipulation out loud. Shares slowed, then reversed into backlash. But Decker and Vivian kept posting, kept cutting, kept lying. And every lie was logged, time-stamped, and preserved. 8 weeks between their viral smear and Royce Bledum's parking lot ultimatum. And during those 8 weeks, I watched Decker move from confident operator to trapped animal. November 3rd, 6:15 in the evening. I was working the warehouse night shift across from Decker's office building, one of 3 consulting firms he'd been renting space from since his last venture went under. I'd been tracking his movements for 2 months. I knew his schedule, knew when he left, knew how tight the walls were closing in. Royce Bledum pulled into the lot in a black Mercedes at 6'12", 56 years old, built like a former linebacker with a known reputation for recovering debts through whatever method was available. I'd pulled his name from Burrell's files where he appeared as one of Decker's largest creditors. $200,000 sunk into a restaurant venture that never opened its doors. I was in my truck with a clear line of sight when Royce cut Decker off in the parking lot. I raised my phone and started recording. Royce didn't bother with any warm-up. $200,000, Coldwell. His voice reached me across the empty lot. You promised 40% returns in 6 months. That was 2 years ago. Decker's body telegraphed panic, hands up, retreating toward his car. Royce, I know. I'm working on it. The restaurant deal collapsed, but I have new investors lined up. You have nothing. Royce moved closer. Unhurried, radiating threat the way hot pavement radiates heat. I've looked into you. Failed ventures. Gambling debts. Maxed credit. You're hemorrhaging money you don't have. I need 60 more days. Decker's voice had gone desperate, cornered. There's money coming. The kids trust once we get guardianship finalized. There it was. On camera, audio clear and clean. I don't care where it comes from. Royce's voice dropped to something colder. December 31st. Or I file criminal fraud charges, Coldwell. Criminal charges are the considerate option. Are we clear? Decker nodded, face drained in the parking lot light. There's a particular kind of satisfaction in watching a predator get hunted by something larger, especially when you're capturing it all. Royce climbed back into his Mercedes and left. Decker stood in that lot for 5 minutes, phone to his ear, voice too low for me to catch, but his fear was legible from across the street. I saved the recording immediately. Encrypted folder, same location, where I'd been keeping Burrell's financial evidence, Alton's party footage, and the unedited master files from Vivian's own camera's files she'd carelessly pushed to cloud storage I'd accessed through Wren's family account. The viral video that had opened at 847 views had climbed to 2.3 million shares by the time I punched out of my shift. What they didn't understand was that every share of their edited lie was building a defamation case against them. Documentation of intent to destroy my reputation through deliberate fraud. And Decker had just confessed on video that he meant to drain my granddaughter's inheritance to settle gambling debts. An explicit verbal admission. The kid's trust. 4 words that would gut him in family court. Nadine had anticipated desperation. She'd constructed the legal trap on the assumption that they'd eventually back themselves into a corner. She hadn't reckoned it would happen this quickly. 8 days from Sheldon's warning to the viral smear campaign. 2 months from the party to a recorded confession of intent to defraud a minor. They were moving faster than even Nadine had mapped out, which meant the war she'd prepared for was accelerating on its own timeline. 3 months later, they'd make it formal, January 9th, 2022. The summons came on January 9th, delivered by a process server who caught me coming off night shift. The phrase, "Petition for Emergency Guardianship and Asset Protection," was highlighted in yellow. 47 pages. I sat in my truck and went through every word while the winter sun broke over the roofline of the warehouse. They'd been building this for months, possibly longer. The petition described me as mentally incompetent, 68 years old, living alone, drawing a warehouse security guard's salary, exhibiting erratic behavior at a child's birthday party, citing the edited viral videos as their evidence, refusing to cooperate with family financial planning, presenting inappropriate gifts that had traumatized a vulnerable 6-year-old. They were asking the court to declare me unfit to award them emergency guardianship, to transfer management of Wren's trust assets, to protect her from her unstable grandfather. I called Sheldon from the parking lot. They filed. "I know," he said. "I've been waiting for it." His voice was even. "Court date is January 14th. Don't worry, we're ready." 5 days between that yellow highlighted summons and sitting in a courtroom watching my daughter attempt to have me declared incompetent. The whole time I kept turning over Nadine's letter. "They'll call you crazy. Let them. Sanity is what we prove, not what we claim." January 14th, 9 in the morning. Family courtroom in Indianapolis, fluorescent lights draining the color from everything. Vivian sat at the plaintiff's table in a conservative dress, makeup precise, performing the role of the anxious daughter. Decker beside her in a suit, that probably ran more than my monthly rent playing the conscientious son-in-law. Judge Nadine Castile presided from the bench, early 60s, silver hair, pulled back, the measured and patient bearing of someone who had cataloged every manipulation tactic a family could devise. She had a thick file open in front of her before proceedings even began. Decker's attorney stood first. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the sort of lawyer retained when the plan is to smother opposition under paperwork. Your Honor, this is a straightforward matter of protecting a vulnerable minor from an unstable guardian. Mr. Whitaker is 68 years old, living alone on a warehouse security guard's salary, and displayed erratic, inappropriate behavior at his granddaughter's 6th birthday party. He ran clips from the edited viral video, me arriving with the gray-wrapped box, the scratched wood coming into view, Vivian's wounded voiceover about trauma and instability. This behavior is consistent with cognitive decline. We are requesting an immediate psychiatric evaluation and emergency guardianship pending the outcome. The child's trust assets must be shielded from impulsive and incompetent management. Sheldon rose slowly, deliberately. He'd told me in the parking lot beforehand, stay calm regardless of what they said. Let him handle it. That box, Sheldon said, his voice sharp enough to leave a mark, contained a USB drive carrying Mrs. Whitaker's final wishes and a key to a trust worth $2.8 million. My client's competence is not what's in question here. Their motives are. He laid out the unedited footage, all 7 camera angles from the party. Decker's violence, his performed contempt, the hidden compartment releasing, Wren's fierce stand to protect the gift. Then he placed Burrell's files on the record, 3 years of documented financial fraud, forged signatures, falsified statements, and the parking lot confession in which Decker had explicitly stated his intention to raid the kids' trust fund to cover gambling debts. Mrs. Whitaker designed this trust specifically to insulate her granddaughter from financial predators. The petitioners are not seeking guardianship. They are seeking access to assets they have no legal right to touch. Decker's attorney objected. This is character assassination, Your Honor. The petition concerns Mr. Whitaker's mental competence, not unrelated financial matters. Unrelated. Sheldon's voice went flat as ice. The petition was drafted in July of 2021, 2 months before the birthday party they're now citing as their evidence. Page 33 identifies a pre-scheduled psychiatric evaluator. Page 41 contains template guardianship orders waiting for a signature. This was not a response to troubling behavior. This was a premeditated legal ambush. Silence pressed down on the courtroom. Judge Castile's expression held steady, but I watched her eyes move to specific pages in the file. You want to know what it feels like to sit 3 feet from the child you raised, while her attorney reads a psychiatric profile of you designed to make you sound dangerous. It feels like watching someone you loved take you apart line by line with paperwork. What you're about to hear is the moment this whole fight shifted, when what had been done in the dark finally had to answer for itself. Before we get there, I want to ask you something. If you discovered that someone close to you had been quietly working against you for years, would you confront them the moment you knew, or would you wait, gather everything, and let the truth speak for itself? Vivian wouldn't lift her eyes toward me. She kept them fixed on the table, hands folded, holding her performance together. The hearing ran 2 hours. Arguments, counter-arguments, evidence laid out and challenged. Decker's attorney pressed for emergency guardianship. Sheldon pushed back with Nadine's trust documentation and the fraud evidence. At last, Judge Castile spoke. This court will not be rushed. Her tone left no room for debate. Final evaluation is scheduled for March 15, 2022. Mr. Whitaker will undergo competency assessment by a court-appointed psychiatrist. Until those results are reviewed, current trust arrangements remain intact. No emergency guardianship is granted at this time. Decker's face drained of color. His attorney moved to object. The arrangements Mrs. Whitaker put in place before her death are legally sound. Judge Castile continued. Any changes require substantial evidence of incompetence or malfeasance. This court sees neither at present. We reconvene following the March evaluation. Gavel down. We'd taken the battle. The war was still waiting for March. Outside the courthouse, Sheldon pulled me close, voice low. The judge referenced sealed filings, he said. Did you catch it? No. He turned his phone toward me. Court filing reference, Coldwell v. Whitaker cross-petition for fraud investigation sealed pending evaluation. You filed fraud charges 2 weeks ago before they moved on guardianship. Burrell's evidence, the parking lot confession, the documented debt history, I laid all of it in front of the prosecutor's office. Sheldon's smile was thin and precise. The judge can't act on it yet. She needs the competency evaluation to run clean, uncontested. But she knows what's sitting underneath this case. They'd walked into that courtroom thinking they were on offense. They had no idea Sheldon had already filed countercharges against them. No idea the psychiatric evaluation wasn't just a measure of my competence. It was a clock buying time for a criminal investigation. They couldn't see coming. How long before they figure it out? I asked. Maybe never if we're fortunate. The investigation is sealed. They'll start sensing something's wrong when subpoenas begin arriving. Sheldon pocketed his phone. March 15th. Pass the evaluation, and everything Nadine built becomes permanent. Fail, and we fight this for years. I'll pass. And I know you will. But first, Nadine's final clause needs to activate. I looked at him. Which clause? The one that makes the birthday party footage legally enforceable. Clarice is delivering the certified documents to my office next week. Once they're processed, the moral disqualification becomes permanent record. They lose all rights the moment that paperwork clears. 2 weeks on from the courtroom, Nadine's final move locked into place. Clarice Dunbar came to my door on March 1st, carrying a manila envelope sealed in red wax. Before she said a word, I knew Nadine's endgame was about to become legal fact. She had me hold this for 3 years. Clarice said, stepping through into my kitchen. Made me swear to deliver it exactly 90 days before the deadline. Not a day early, not a day late. March 1st, 2022. The envelope held a single document, certified, notarized, backdated to February 12, 2019. Nadine's conditional clause, the moral disqualification trigger woven into the structure of the trust. Any person who publicly insults or shows contempt for the family heirloom box or the trustee in front of witnesses automatically forfeits all rights to manage the beneficiary's assets. I read it 3 times. The language was surgical, specific, and enforceable. Eleanor had this notarized 3 years ago, Clarice said, using Nadine's middle name the way old friends do. The clause was active from the moment she signed it, not from when they triggered it. On the birthday party, I said, August 17, 2021, 7:10 p.m. The moment Decker called you a disgrace on camera and knocked that box from Wren's hands, he surrendered every legal right to touch her inheritance. It's time-stamped evidence. 6 cameras, 60 witnesses. Nadine had drafted the trap in 2019. They had sprung it in 2021. And it had just become enforceable evidence in 2022. She'd planned 3 years ahead. They've had no legal standing for 8 months, Clarice went on. Every petition, every lawsuit, every claim filed since that party legally void. They just haven't been told yet. When do they find out? When Sheldon files this with the court next week. Then it becomes permanent public record. Irreversible. I sat at the kitchen table where Nadine had once sat dying, but still calculating, and the full architecture of what she'd built came clear to me. Not merely a trust, not merely a moral test, a time bomb engineered to go off at exactly the right moment. Clarice set the certified document on the table before she left. She loved you enough to spend her last months building walls. Now you just have to hold the line until December 20th. 7 weeks between Nadine's claws locking into place and Burl walking into that diner. And every day I felt the net drawing tighter around Decker, a noose he'd knotted himself. April 22nd, 7:30 in the evening. A roadside diner 40 miles outside Indianapolis, the sort of place truckers pulled into for coffee, and nobody lingered over questions. Burl had picked it deliberately. Off the main roads, no security cameras, cash only. He came in 10 minutes late with 3 thick folders under one arm and a flash drive in his pocket. Sheldon was already there, seated across from me in a corner booth with sightlines to both exits. Burl looked like he'd shed 5 years off his life in the 6 months since his phone call in that parking lot. Dark circles, hands that wouldn't stay still, the hollow look of someone who'd been carrying criminal knowledge with nowhere safe to set it down. He pushed the folders across the table. Bank statements 2019 through 2022. Every false entry, every forged authorization, every dollar routed into offshore accounts. Sheldon opened the first folder and moved through the pages with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen financial fraud laid out before. This is comprehensive. 3 years of documentation, Burl said. Signature forgery practice sheets. He worked on your handwriting for months before attempting the actual documents. Embezzlement timeline keyed to the gambling losses. Contracts with backdated modifications. Everything. Total exposure, I ask it. $340,000 in gambling debts. Another $200,000 in collapsed ventures. He's been papering over losses with fraud since 2019. Then Burl put the flash drive on the table. I've been recording every interaction he's had with me since November. His voice had dropped to something barely audible. Every conversation in his office, every illegal instruction he gave me, every direct admission of fraud he made to my face. It's all on this drive. 6 months of it. His hands trembled as he slid it toward me. Time-stamped, unedited, admissible anywhere. He talked about forging your signature to access the trust, about having you declared incompetent and committed, about using Wren's inheritance to clear his debts. He said all of it. Multiple times. On tape. You want to know what justice sounds like? It sounds like a frightened accountant sliding a flash drive across a diner table and barely getting the words out, I got everything. Why did you do this? I asked. Burl met my eyes. Because I have a daughter. She's 8. And if someone were scheming to steal from her, to have her grandfather locked away, to get at her money, I'd want someone to step in. He paused. Nadine asked me to watch him 3 years ago. Said she needed documentation if things went sideways. I didn't fully understand it then. But after the party, after seeing what they did to Wren on camera, I did. Nadine had recruited him years before she died. Had asked him to document, to observe, to record. The password, Burl said. It's encrypted with Nadine's birth date. I picked up the flash drive. That small piece of plastic held enough to put Decker away for a decade, possibly longer. Nadine's moral clause had stripped their legal rights 8 months ago. Burl's wire had captured 6 months of criminal admissions. And in 3 weeks, a state investigator would step into that evidence like walking into a detonation. When does the investigation officially open? Sheldon asked. May 15th, Burl said. Prosecutor's office unseals the case. Subpoenas go out. Decker won't understand what's happening until federal agents are at his door. I held the flash drive in my palm. 6 months of audio. Every fraud, every forgery, every scheme spoken aloud. Nadine had given me the moral clause. Burl had given me the criminal evidence. Together they were a guillotine. But I still had to see what Nadine had recorded on the original USB from the party. 3 weeks after Burl handed me the encrypted drive, Sheldon and I sat in his law office in front of Nadine's original USB from the birthday party box. Air-gapped computer, no internet connection, maximum security. When Sheldon typed in Nadine's birth date and the USB unlocked, the first file that opened was a video my wife recorded 3 weeks before she died, and she was smiling. She looked frail. Hospital gown. An IV stand was visible behind her. But her eyes were sharp, and her voice was steady. Garland. She looked straight into the camera. If you're seeing this, Vivian didn't pass the test. The box was opened. The clause has been triggered. And I need you to hear me, I'm not heartbroken. I'm at peace because now you can protect our granddaughter with everything I've left behind. Sheldon hit pause and looked at me. I nodded for him to keep going. Nadine spent 15 minutes walking through the moral clause in her own words. How she'd crafted it to catch public contempt specifically. How she'd anticipated that Decker would push to have me institutionalized. How she'd known Vivian wouldn't resist him, she'd go along. They'll say you've lost your mind, she told the camera. They'll paint you as a danger, a burden unfit to decide anything. Fine. Let them say it. Sanity is what we prove, not what we announce. And you'll have proof. Everything you need is on this drive. Sheldon pulled up the additional files. Email threads stretching back 18 months. Decker working out forgery logistics with an offshore contact. Financial records tracing the gambling losses, one casino, then another, then the next. Loss after loss. $340,000 dropped into a pit he figured he'd cover with Wren's inheritance. Audio clips. Conversations caught on recording through channels I didn't ask about, and Sheldon didn't volunteer. Decker and Vivian mapping out how to push me into a care facility, which attorneys could fast-track a guardianship filing, which facilities accepted emergency placements. Nadine had been quietly building the record of all of it before she died. This isn't just evidence, Sheldon said, scrolling through the files. It's a prosecution roadmap. She constructed the whole case herself. The last video was dated 3 weeks before Nadine's death. She looked right into the lens. By the time you decrypt this, the trap has already sprung. You're probably frightened, probably furious, maybe mourning the person our daughter decided to become. But Garland, you married a woman who cared enough to lay groundwork from her deathbed. Use it. Keep Wren safe. I love you. She was smiling as she said it. Dying and still smiling, because she already knew I'd come out on the other side. 8 weeks between hearing Nadine's voice reach me from beyond death and sitting with a state investigator who confirmed she'd handed us a finished criminal case. July the 2nd, 6:45 in the evening. I was walking out from my warehouse shift when a woman in a gray suit came through the gate carrying credentials and a case file already 3 inches thick. Mr. Whitaker, I'm Petra Halverson, State Financial Crimes Investigator. 47 years old, 15 years focused on elder fraud and family theft, with the unhurried precision of someone who'd watched every scheme in the book get run by people who should have known better. I've formally opened an investigation into Decker Coldwell identity fraud, financial elder abuse conspiracy to steal from a minor. Your cooperation is voluntary, but it matters. She'd already spoken with Burl, already gone through Alton's party footage, already submitted the forged signature samples and bank records into evidence. We have the wire recordings, Petra continued. The party footage, the forgeries, the documented institutionalization plan. This case is solid, but we have to move quickly. Your attorney mentioned a December 20th deadline. That's when the trust structure becomes permanent, I told her. After that date, it can't be altered. Wren's inheritance is locked in for good. Can you have charges ready before then? Petra's smile was thin and certain. Mr. Whitaker, with what your wife put together, we could close this in 6 weeks. The pre-death fraud documentation she left is the most thorough I've encountered in this field. She handed us half a finished case before anyone knew a crime existed. Official validation, the state picking up Nadine's roadmap and carrying it into court. Charges in October, Petra said. Before Thanksgiving. Trial date to follow, but the fraud isn't in question. 2 months on, Vivian made her final move. August 30th. 3:15 in the afternoon, Wren's school parking lot. I was in my truck waiting on my granddaughter for our weekly supervised visit when Vivian appeared at the window. Dad, please, can we talk? I quietly hit record on my phone. Indiana is a one-party consent state. She had no reason to know she was being captured. What do you want, Vivian? She'd rehearsed this. I could see it in how she'd positioned herself. The practiced tears, the deliberate vulnerability. I'm sorry. I never wanted things to reach this point. Decker made mistakes, but I'm still Wren's mother. Can't we find a way to move forward? My reputation has taken a real hit. The backlash online. People sending threats. Can't we work something out? You know what it's like watching your own daughter run a rehearsed apology. Like she's reading from a script. It's like someone trying to sell you something you already paid for, and they lost. Are you apologizing for what you said about me in that courtroom? I asked, voice flat and cold. Or for planning to have me locked away? Or for going after your daughter's money? I wasn't aware of everything Decker, she stopped, recalibrated, had going on financially. If I'd known how far in debt he was, I never would have. You knew enough. The gambling, the offshore accounts, that all came out later. I didn't know. You signed the guardianship petition in July 2021, 2 months before that party. You knew then. Something behind her eyes changed. The performance slipped. Things were complicated. From here on, I told her everything goes through lawyers and witnesses. You want time with Wren? That runs through the court-ordered supervised arrangement. You want to talk about the trust? You sit down with Sheldon. You don't come to me alone. Not ever. Are we clear? Vivian looked at me a moment, nodded, turned, got back in her car, and drove off. I stopped the recording. 23 minutes. 3 separate unintended admissions of prior knowledge. 1 direct statement about Decker's finances that flatly contradicted what she'd told the court under oath in January. I sent the audio to Petra and Sheldon with 1 line. She just walked back her own sworn testimony. In 7 weeks, they'd swing at one last desperate target. A staged public reconciliation. A push to get a signature on film. Some attempt to salvage something from what they'd already lost. But the mechanism Nadine built had already closed. She'd made certain of it before her last breath. October was coming, and with it their final stand. It landed with the weight of inevitability. The invitation on Covenant Community Church letterhead, Alton's signature at the bottom, arrived October 12th. The date set was October 18th. Exactly 63 days before the December 20th trust deadline. Not 65, not 60. 63 exactly. Someone had run the numbers. This was no spontaneous gesture of healing. This was a deadline move wearing reconciliation's clothes. I called Alton that same hour. Did you sign off on this? I asked. Decker asked to use the hall for a family gathering, Alton said carefully. I said yes to the space, but Garland, they've had people in there setting up for 3 days. Professional equipment. This is no family dinner. I need to see it. Come now before they're done. October 14th, 3:00 in the afternoon. Covenant Community Church's main hall had been converted into a production set. Camera rigs on tripods locked at 3 different angles. Lighting with barn doors and diffusers. A raised platform with 2 chairs and a small table between them. Wireless microphones clipped to the table edge. A schedule taped to the wall. 7:07 p.m. guest arrival. 7:15 p.m. opening remarks. 7:30 p.m. Vivian. Family Unity Statement plus Asset Management Agreement. Signing at 7:45 p.m. Celebration reception. They had put my surrender on a printed timetable. Alton stood beside me reading it. This has nothing to do with reconciliation. It's a production designed to put pressure on you in front of a camera. Have you seen the actual document? No. Decker mentioned something about voluntary family asset coordination while the crew was setting things up. I photographed the entire room. Camera positions, lighting setup, the schedule, the videographer's business cards left on the soundboard. 63 days left, I said. They're out of time, out of options, and using your church as their closing argument. Alton's face was grim. What do you need from me? Be here Wednesday night. Watch everything. Record what you can. I'll be there. 4 days between walking through that staged hall and standing in a back corridor with Decker's desperation thick enough to press against you, and I knew Nadine had seen this moment coming. October 18th, 7:00 p.m. 30 minutes before the event was due to begin. I'd come in early, parked out back, slipped through the side entrance Alton had left unlocked for me. Decker wasn't up front with the guests. He wasn't in the main hall with Vivian adjusting camera angles. He was here alone in a dim corridor, a leather folder under one arm, giving off the tight, nowhere-left-to-go energy that makes sensible people back out of the room. "We need to talk," he said. "Now before this gets going." I figured talking was the whole point in front of everyone on camera. This is a preliminary legal matter. He opened the folder. A document. Clean, professional, typeset asset management agreement, standard language. You sign, I sign, we walk out and present it as settled. Why not do that out there with witnesses watching like your own schedule says? His jaw went tight. This has to be handled privately first. Legal protocol. Legal protocol means a notary and 3 witnesses. I don't see a notary. Decker's eyes flashed. Sign this right now, or I go public psychiatric evaluations, doctor's notes, proof of diminished capacity. Your face on every screen before sunrise. Vivian came around the corner at the hallway's far end, heels snapping against the tile. Her expression had been assembled in advance. "Dad, please," she said, closing the gap. "Just do it for Ren, for the family. One simple step, and we can straighten all of this out." The man at my side spoke up. "Where's the notary?" Decker's face went red. "There is no notary. We don't need one. It's not a legal document. Pure theater. There's a look that settles on a man when he's broke, trapped, and staring at prison time, and Decker Coldwell wore it like a mask, splitting at the seams. "Royce Bledum is in the parking lot." Decker said, his voice going low and flat. "Waiting on an answer about what I owe him. My shoes, if you won't sign, if you block my access to those trust assets, I'm finished by month's end. Not figuratively. Literally dead. You follow me. Not my problem. It becomes Vivian's problem. It becomes Ren's burden the second they go after her mother for conspiracy." Vivian grabbed his arm. "Decker, stop." "No." He wrenched free and stepped toward me. He has to understand the stakes. The criminal case, the fraud charges, the wire recordings Burl handed over, everything evaporates if we walk out there as one family. Voluntary asset management. Grandfather graciously stepping aside for a younger, capable generation. Prosecutor sees harmony, case falls apart. That was the whole architecture of it. Use the event as documentation that I'd willingly given up control. Hand Petra a tidy picture of resolved family conflict. Transform the investigation into something that looked like outsiders meddling in a private matter. "No," I said. Decker's hand shot to my collar, bunching the fabric. Vivian gasped. "You selfish old—" I didn't move, didn't flinch. I held his gaze. "Then we sign it out there in front of everyone," I said, voice level as cold water. "Cameras on all your witnesses watching Pastor Alton right there. Every guest in that room sees exactly which document you're asking me to put my name on, or nothing gets signed tonight." Decker went white. His grip loosened. Vivian whispered, "Just agree. We'll sort it out later." But Decker's eyes hadn't left mine, turning over the question of how much I actually knew. Had I already sat with Sheldon and gone through the real asset management agreement? Did I know it required notarization and 3 witness signatures arrangements he'd never made? I knew. Sheldon had walked me through the legitimate version weeks earlier, page by page. What Decker was gripping bore no resemblance to it. He'd brought a counterfeit to this hallway ambush, banking on me signing in a dim corridor, something that would photograph cleanly to show a prosecutor as voluntary cooperation, but carry 0 legal weight. Instead, I was about to walk him onto that stage in front of 60 witnesses and the cameras he'd set up to capture my surrender. "Get your hands off me," I said, quietly. He released, stepped back. Vivian had gone pale. "Here's what happens," I said. "We go out there together. You announce the reconciliation. I agree to review the asset management proposal, all of it on record in front of everyone you invited. Are we doing this?" Decker swallowed hard and nodded. He had no idea who was already seated inside. When we entered the main hall, I spotted them at once. Pastor Alton in the 3rd row. Burl near the back, tense but present. Sheldon in the 2nd row with his briefcase. Witnesses Decker never knew I'd arranged. The wooden box sat on the small stage table beneath the hall lights, the same battered surface he'd called garbage 14 months ago, and 60 people sat forward, waiting to find out why I'd brought it back. Decker stood rigid at my side, panic barely held under the surface. Vivian occupied the front row, her smile perfect and completely frozen. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I said into the microphone. "Decker brought me here to address family reconciliation and asset management. Before we do that, I'd like to ask a few people to come forward." Decker's head snapped toward me. "What?" "Pastor Alton Faber, please join us." Pastor Alton rose and walked to the stage with the unhurried bearing of a man who had prepared thoroughly. Decker's face went ashen. "Pastor Alton," I said, "you were at my granddaughter's 6th birthday party on August 17th, 2021. Tell everyone what you witnessed." His voice was clear, unwavering. "I heard Mr. Coldwell call you a disgrace. His words were, 'You're a disgrace to this family.' I also overheard a discussion behind the office door in which Mr. Coldwell spoke about institutionalizing you. He said, 'Once he signs, get him to the home immediately.'" A wave of gasps moved through the room. Decker started to speak. I raised one hand. "Burl Canfield, please." Burl rose from the back row and came forward the way a man moves when he's been carrying something too heavy for too long, hollowed out, relieved, ready to put it down. "Mr. Canfield," I said, "you worked as Mr. Coldwell's accountant for 3 years. Can you stand behind the financial records you gave state investigators?" "Yes." His voice trembled but held. "I documented systematic fraud, forged signatures mimicking Mr. Whitaker's handwriting, falsified bank statements, $340,000 in gambling debts concealed from creditors and family, all time-stamped and authenticated. I also captured 6 months of recorded conversations in which Mr. Coldwell explicitly laid out plans to forge documents and steal from his daughter's trust." A phone was raised somewhere in the crowd. Decker's own cameras were recording every word. "Sheldon Orvath," I said. "My attorney." Sheldon approached the stage, opened his briefcase, drew out a single document. "Mrs. Nadine Whitaker built this trust with specific legal protections." Sheldon said, his delivery precise, rehearsed for this room, including a moral clause. "Anyone who publicly demeans or shows contempt for the trustee or for the designated family heirloom," he gestured toward the wooden box, "automatically and permanently forfeits all rights to administer the beneficiary's assets. No appeal. No exception." The clause took effect the day Mrs. Whitaker signed it in February 2019. 10 minutes. That's all it took from Pastor Alton's first word to the moment I reached for that box and I watched Nadine's 3-year trap close with the precision of a Swiss watch. I set my palm on the wooden box, found the hidden seam Nadine had shown me, and rotated the base a quarter turn counterclockwise. Click. The false bottom released. The compartment opened. Inside, a single envelope. Nadine's handwriting across the front. "To be read when the trap closes." I broke the seal and drew out the letter. Her words. Her voice from beyond the grave. "My dearest Garland," I read aloud. "This box belonged to my grandmother. It crossed an ocean in 1907 carrying nothing but hope. It is sacred to our family. Anyone who treats it or the trustee protecting our granddaughter with public contempt loses all rights to Wren's inheritance forever." The room held its breath. I predicted they would fail this test. I predicted Decker would call it garbage. I predicted Vivian would stand by and say nothing. I designed the clause knowing their greed would destroy them. By the time you read this, Garland, you've already won. Protect our granddaughter. I love you. That's what justice looks like. It looks like reading your dead wife's words aloud to a room full of witnesses, while the people who tried to rob your granddaughter understand in the same moment that they've already lost. August 17th, 2021. I said, looking straight at Decker. "You called this box junk. Called me a disgrace. Knocked it out of a 6-year-old's hands. All on camera. The claws fired that night. You've spent 14 months fighting over something that was already gone." Decker's breathing came short and ragged. "You manipulated." "Nadine knew exactly where your choices would take you," I said. "I only had to wait. The trust belongs to Wren, locked permanent. You have no legal standing, no management rights, no access to anything. The December 20th deadline covers paperwork you'll never execute because the authority to execute it isn't yours." Sheldon raised a second document. The moral clause activation was certified and filed with the court on March 8, 2022. Every lawsuit, every petition, every claim filed since that birthday party legally void. Vivian made a small sound. Horror. Recognition. Decker stared at the wooden box, at Nadine's letter, at 60 people watching it all come undone. Then he moved, not toward me, toward the box. Both hands grabbed for it, sending it sliding toward the table's edge. "That money was supposed to fix everything," he screamed loud enough to carry to the back row. "It's mine. It's mine." 6 cameras had him. 60 witnesses heard every syllable, an open admission of intent to steal from his own daughter, shouted in a hall at a reconciliation event he had organized himself. Vivian grabbed his arm. "Decker, stop!" He threw her off, face gone ugly with rage. "I earned that money. 3 years managing that old man. 3 years of playing devoted family, and she rigged it so I end up with nothing." Pastor Alton stepped between us, steady and firm. And Decker saw it then. Saw Pastor Alton's phone recording him. Saw the cameras he'd set up to document my defeat, now documenting his confession. saw 60 faces looking back at him with shock and disgust. The fury drained out of his face, and something closer to terror took its place. Then the rear doors of the church swung open. Royce Bledum stepped through and came down the center aisle at a deliberate pace. 3 men in business suits followed at his heels, creditors, investors. Every one of them someone Decker had borrowed from and could never repay. Decker took one look and bolted. He didn't make it 10 ft past the church doors before the red and blue lights lit up the parking lot. 3 unmarked sedans had sealed off the exit bumper to bumper. Royce's silver BMW sat parked at an angle that was anything but accidental. I trailed the crowd out and posted up on the church steps. Decker was trying to muscle past Royce when Royce's voice stopped him cold. "Not so fast, Coldwell." October air carried every word. "You went on camera and confessed to theft in front of 60 witnesses. You believe I'm walking away from $200,000. I can explain this." "You did your explaining already," Royce said, motioning toward the men behind him. "The 4 of us have been pooling information for 6 weeks. Total claims come to $437,000 across 4 defrauded investors. Federal investigators have been in the loop since September." A rear sedan door swung open, and a woman climbed out, gray suit badge riding her belt. Decker Coldwell. Her voice left no room for argument. "I'm Agent Fiona Rennick, Securities and Exchange Commission. We're executing warrants on charges of securities, fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft from a minor." All the color left Decker's face. "You can't do this here. This is a church." Agent Rennick didn't slow down. "The investigation has run for 6 weeks. What you confessed to tonight only confirms the record we've already built. You have the right to remain silent." She recited the rest of the Miranda warning, while Royce stood with both arms folded, the look on his face belonging to someone who'd spent months running down a target and had finally closed the distance. Nadine had seen desperation coming. Federal involvement wasn't something she'd mapped out, but the trap she'd designed was solid enough that it didn't matter what walked into it. The church bells rang out 8:00 p.m. Those same bells, same mournful tone that had marked Nadine's funeral 4 years ago. For about 5 seconds, the noise of the parking lot disappeared, and I was back in that hospital room, hearing her voice one last time. "Protect what matters, even if it costs you everything." Vivian materialized at my shoulder, Wren's small hand locked in hers. "Dad, please." Every layer of performance had fallen away. "They're putting him under arrest. They're taking him. What do you want from me?" "You're supposed to protect your daughter," I told her. "I am protecting her." "That's exactly what I'm no." Wren was 7 years old, standing in a church parking lot watching her father get handcuffed, not understanding any of it. "You tried to drain her inheritance to rescue a man who'd been robbing her. Call that what it is. It's not protection. It's betrayal." Vivian's face fell apart. I didn't realize how far it had gone. "You realized enough?" I got down to Wren's level. Sweetheart, would you go wait with Pastor Alton just for a minute? I need a word with your mom." Wren gave a small nod, lip unsteady. Alton was already there, easing her toward the church garden. I straightened and turned back to my daughter. "That trust is sealed," I said. "Permanently. Wren is the sole beneficiary. You hold no rights over it, no access, no say, nothing, Dad. I'm her mother. You're a woman who watched her husband try to have her own father committed, all to get at a child's money. What kind of mother that makes you is for the court to sort out." She seized my arm. "Please, I know what I did wrong. Give me a chance to make it right. Court-supervised visitation witnesses present every time. That's the only offer on the table." "How long does that last?" "Until Wren is 18 and old enough to make her own judgment about whether you belong in her life." Vivian's knees gave. She went down onto the church steps, mascara cutting lines down her face, everything she'd been holding together, finally gone. I left her there and found Wren in the West Garden with Alton. Grandpa. That small voice hit me somewhere deep. How come everybody's so mad at Daddy? I lowered myself to the cold grass, my knees made their objections known. That one doesn't have an easy answer, sweetheart. When you're older, I'll explain it properly, and I won't hold anything back. For right now, the one thing that matters is this: you're safe. Nobody is going to hurt you, and I love you. Are you leaving? Her eyes were wet. Mommy told me you might go away somewhere. I'm staying right here, that's a promise. She dug into her coat pocket and brought out a folded sheet of paper. I made this for you. I opened it up. Crayon stick figures the way only a 7-year-old draws them. Our family lettered carefully across the top. 3 figures. The tall one with white hair, that was me. The little one with pigtails, that was her. And the figure in the center had wings and a halo. The label beneath it read, Nadine. She'd drawn her grandmother as an angel, the lettering something Alton had clearly helped her work out. No sign of her parents anywhere on the page. A memory struck me like a physical blow. St. Raphael's Hospital, the nursery holding newborn Wren, while Nadine looked on from her wheelchair. Her cancer was quiet then, but we both understood it was only resting. We made a vow to that new little life she would grow up knowing she was safe and loved. Keeping that vow had meant cutting her own parents loose. "This is beautiful," I said, and my voice wasn't steady. "Can I have it?" "It's yours," Wren said. "So you don't forget we're family. Just us two and Grandma Nadine keeping watch from heaven." Alton rested a hand on my shoulder. "I ought to bring her in. Too cold out here." I held on to Wren a moment longer. "I'll be seeing you soon, sweetheart. That's a promise." "Promise." Alton walked her back inside. I stayed in the garden by myself, holding that crayon, drawing a child's picture that contained more moral clarity than either of her parents had ever managed in their lives. 63 days until December 20th. The point at which the trust would close forever. Decker was behind bars. Vivian was in pieces. Wren was protected. I headed to my truck. Phone going off. Message from Sheldon. Trust documents filed, notarized. Wren protected. Well done. My hand was on my keys when a second woman in a gray suit came out of the shadows alongside my truck. "Mr. Whitaker, badge already out." "I'm Special Agent Lydia Stroup, IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Your daughter's tax returns 2018 through 2022. We need to go over them. Specifically, the unreported income and fraudulent deductions that may have been channeled into criminal activity." I stood there looking at her at the badge at the lot behind her, where agents were putting Decker into the back of a sedan. Nadine had raised barriers to keep Wren away from her parents' destruction. Now the IRS was assembling a case that could swallow both of them whole. That IRS inquiry into Vivian's tax records was born the same night right there in the church parking lot. 3 days on Agent Stroop's questions about unreported income were still rattling around in my head, the subpoena barely cool in my jacket pocket, when Sheldon Orvath rang with word that Decker had submitted a counterfiling. Coercion, he claimed. Alleged I pressured him into signing everything under duress. "He's going with elder abuse," Sheldon told me. "Arguing you ran a campaign of threats and manufactured accusations against him. He wants every property transfer thrown out and the trust declared invalid. Can he pull that off? He can file the papers." Court set for November 2nd. We'll have our answer then. November 2nd, 10:15 in the morning, state courtroom in Indianapolis. Judge Nadine Castile on the bench again. Decker came in at the plaintiff's table wearing an orange jumpsuit, wrists shackled, his court-appointed attorney beside him. "No bail when you're in federal custody." His eyes had that hollow, cornered look, a man who'd played his last card and already knew how the hand was going to end. The attorney got to his feet, young, out of his depth, notes in hand. Your Honor, my client was manipulated by a vindictive father-in-law and compelled to surrender his rights under severe duress. Mr. Whitaker weaponized the threat of legal action, public exposure, and family separation to coerce him. Sheldon stood up without any drama. Your Honor, forensic handwriting analysis establishes that Mr. Coldwell forged his wife's signature on 6 separate loan applications across 3 years. Beyond that, he rehearsed Mr. Whitaker's signature repeatedly with clear intent to defraud. 3 years of documented criminal conduct flatly contradict any claim of coercion. He set Burrell's evidence on the table, the practice pages, the forged documents, the full chronology establishing that Decker's scheme had been running since 2019. Judge Castile went through every page with the same methodical attention she'd applied at the guardianship hearing. Mr. Coldwell, the evidence of premeditated fraud directly undermines your coercion claim. This court finds no merit in your petition to void the trust structure. Decker's attorney pushed once more. Your Honor, we would ask. I'm directing a full lifestyle audit of both parents. Judge Castile cut him off along with a mandatory home environment evaluation by Child Protective Services. Should the court determine these parents cannot provide a safe and stable household, appropriate action will follow. The color left Decker's face entirely. The last complication he could afford was CPS walking through his front door. Sheldon leaned toward me and kept his voice low. The IRS subpoena wasn't random. State investigators flagged Vivian's tax fraud to them 3 weeks back. It hands us additional leverage on the custody front. Did you arrange that? Nadine arranged it. She wrote it all down, predicted they'd use tax fraud as a way to hide assets, and told me to be watching for it. We've been building toward this since September. My wife had built a trap that extended beyond the grave into federal tax law. 18 days later, the rain came down like judgment. November 20th, 6:40 in the evening. I was pulling out of the Kroger parking lot when Vivian's car swung up alongside my truck and boxed me in. She stepped out into the downpour, no umbrella, mascara already streaking down her face. Dad, please, I need to talk to you. I rolled my window down. Make it quick. Can I sit with you? I'm soaked through. I hit the unlock button. She climbed in, dripping onto the seat, shaking. I never wanted to hurt you, she said, her voice cracking. Decker told me it was the only way to hold our marriage together, to give Ren a stable home. He said if I didn't stand with him, he'd walk out and leave us with nothing. So you picked him. I chose what I believed was right for my daughter. You chose to let him try to have your own father committed to steal from your child, to forge signatures and run a fraud scheme. I kept my voice flat, measured. You chose him over your daughter's well-being. You chose his lies over your father's love. Rain pounded the roof so hard, her sobs were nearly swallowed by the noise. But the perfume reached me anyway. Same brand she'd been showing off on social media. $160 a bottle, bought with stolen money while Ren was wearing thrift store hand-me-downs. I didn't know how bad the gambling was, Vivian said. I didn't know about the offshore accounts or the forged. You knew enough, I said. You signed the guardianship petition. You staged the reconciliation event. You stood there while he called me a disgrace at your daughter's birthday. What were you scared of, losing money status? Your social media brand? I nodded toward her wrist. You're still wearing the bracelet he bought you. $3,800. I saw the receipt in Burrell's files. Purchased 3 days after he forged my signature on a loan application. She looked down at the diamond bracelet and fumbled with the clasp, couldn't get it free. I can change, she whispered. I can do better. I can put Ren first. Just give me the chance to show you. I don't want your tears, I said. I don't want your promises. I want your actions. Prove you can put Ren first. Prove you can choose her safety over your own comfort. Until you do, stay away from both of us. Dad, please. The court has ordered supervised visitation 1 hour per week with a licensed social worker present. Those are the terms. Honor them or lose them. She held my gaze a moment, then pushed the door open and walked back into the rain. I watched her taillights dissolve into the downpour. My phone buzzed. Email from Child Protective Services. Subject: home assessment schedule. Coldwell residence. Mr. Whitaker listed as potential alternative guardian. Your presence is requested at the home assessment scheduled for November 21st, 2022, 8 a.m. Please review the attached preliminary report. I opened the attachment. Preliminary findings. Critical safety concern. Evidence of financial instability affecting child's basic needs. Critical safety concern: 2 inappropriate living conditions due to parental stress and conflict. Critical safety concern: 3 signs of emotional neglect and inconsistent care. Recommendation: full investigation warranted. Alternative guardian placement should be considered. Tomorrow morning at 8:00 a.m., I'd have to walk through my daughter's front door and see exactly how far she'd let things fall apart. The home assessment would put in front of me everything I'd been working to protect Ren from. The interrogation room smells like burnt coffee and desperation. Across the metal table, Decker Coldwell looks 20 years older than he did at Thanksgiving dinner 4 weeks ago. His orange jumpsuit sags on a frame that's dropped 20 pounds since his arrest. The fluorescent lights hum overhead like wasps trapped behind glass. And Prosecutor Petra Halverson sits beside me with a manila folder thick enough to bury him. Mr. Coldwell, she says, her voice carrying the full weight of 14 months of investigation. The state of Indiana has concluded its fraud inquiry. We are prepared to file formal charges on 73 counts of wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, and conspiracy to defraud creditors. Decker's eyes cut to me, then away. The handcuffs rattle against the table when he shifts. 73 counts carry a maximum sentence of 15 years, Petra continues. She opens the folder and slides a document across the metal surface. But I'm authorized to extend an offer. 7 years in medium security parole eligibility at 5 in exchange for full testimony against your co-conspirators. I watch Decker's face, the man who screamed at me across Nadine's dining room table, who called me a bitter old fool, and what I see isn't remorse. He's calculating. Who are the co-conspirators? His voice comes out raw, like he hasn't spoken in days. Petra lays 3 photographs face up on the table. Vivian. Lionel Merrick from Grandeur Financial. Marcus Chen from the production company. Your wife coordinated the initial identity theft. Mr. Merrick arranged the fraudulent loans. Mr. Chen produced shell invoices for film projects that never existed. We have recorded calls, email chains, and bank transfer records connecting all 4 of you. Decker stares at Vivian's photograph, my daughter's face frozen in her driver's license photo from 2 years ago. She's smiling. Here's what no one tells you about protecting your children. Sometimes the child you're shielding isn't the one sitting in front of you. What happens if I don't take the deal? Decker asks. 15 years, Petra says, flat as pavement. And your wife faces separate charges as an accessory. The state will pursue guardianship termination for your daughter Ren based on the unsafe conditions in that home. Mr. Whitaker here would in all likelihood be awarded full custody. Decker's jaw tightens. For one brief moment, I think I catch something human moving across his face, fear maybe, or the ghost of regret. Then it closes off into something uglier. I want immunity for Vivian, he says. Petra doesn't flinch. No. Then I want visitation rights with Ren. Also, no. Decker pushes back in his chair, the legs scraping concrete. He laughs, not a real laugh, but the sound a cornered animal makes right before it bites. You people are unbelievable. You want me to burn for 7 years, while my wife walks free. Your wife, I say quietly, has already confessed to her part. She came to me 3 weeks ago in the rain and told me everything. That stops him cold. His eyes snap to mine, sharp and probing. Vivian wouldn't. She did. I leaned forward, keeping my voice steady. She told me about the forged documents, the shell companies, the production scheme. She said you convinced her it was a temporary loan, that you'd pay everything back before anyone noticed. Decker's face drains, white flushes red, then settles into something worse than either empty. If I'm going down, he says slowly, she goes with me. Petra's pen goes still. Excuse me, Vivian wasn't an accessory. Decker says, his voice gathering force, venom working into every word. She was the architect. The forged signatures, her idea. She spent 3 months practicing my father-in-law's handwriting before we approached the first bank. The offshore accounts, she opened them under her maiden name. The production invoices, she wrote everyone. Something cold moves down my spine. Mr. Coldwell, Petra warns false allegations won't improve your position. They're not false. Decker draws a folded sheet from his jumpsuit pocket. How he got it past the guards I can't say, and slides it across the table. That's a photocopy of Vivian's handwriting practice sheets. She left them in our home office, safe. The combination is written on the back. Petra unfolds the page. Her eyes move across it, and I watch her professional composure slip just slightly. Where's the original? She asks. My attorney is holding it along with 18 other documents establishing that Vivian ran this entire operation. Decker looks at me now, really looks at me, and there is nothing human left behind his eyes. I was weak. I was greedy. But she was the mastermind, and I will say exactly that in open court if you push this to trial. The door opens. Burl Canfield steps in holding a document I've never seen. Got the records you requested, ma'am, he says to Petra, then turns to me. You're going to want to see this. He spreads the pages on the table. Jail visitation logs. Decker Coldwell's name at the top, dates running from November 21st through December 4th. 17 entries. Every visitor's name, Vivian Coldwell. 17 visits, Burl Canfield says. Not once did she ask the guards about Wren. Not once did she request a call to check on her daughter. Same question every visit, what are you telling them? I stare at the logs until the names run together. Decker smiles. It is the ugliest thing I have ever seen. Petra closes her folder. We'll be in touch, Mr. Coldwell. Don't go anywhere. I'm in jail, he says. Where exactly would I go? Outside, the December cold hits like a fist. I'm halfway to my truck when I see her. Vivian, standing by the driver's door, phone in hand, face the color of chalk. Dad, she whispers, and holds the screen toward me, a text from Decker's number. I told them you were the brains. Run. 2 unmarked police vehicles roll into the parking lot. Lights off, moving slow. Vivian looks at me. What did you do? Her hand shakes against the behavioral agreement line, and I understand this for what it is, the nearest my daughter will ever get to surrender. No love, no apology. Just legal obedience purchased by the threat of losing Wren for good. 13 days ago, those unmarked cars had us cornered in the lot. Vivian bolted 3 strides before Petra stepped into her path. Mrs. Coldwell, this goes easy or it goes hard. My daughter picked easy. Hands back, no tears, just that vacant expression she's carried since she was 16. They didn't book her. Offered her the identical deal they'd put to Decker talk and cooperate or serve 15 years. December 18th, 2 days before the deadline expires. We're in a notary office smelling of aged paper and lemon cleaner. Sheldon Orvath has arranged 14 pages across the table. Vivian sits opposite me in the gray sweater she wore to Nadine's funeral. Wren colors in the corner a house drawn with nobody home. Vivian Sheldon says, "These conditions aren't negotiable. One breach, one failed test, and visitation ends until Wren turns 18. Sign on the lines indicated." My daughter stares at the page. Her hand just floats there. Where do I sign? Hollow words, nothing behind them. Sheldon directs her to 4 spots. She signs without reading a syllable. I study that hand, the one that forged my signature 17 times. That cashed checks meant for Wren's future. That held our granddaughter only when a camera was watching. This trust means Wren will never lack a roof, I say. Will never be used as a bargaining chip. Never bartered for someone else's comfort. Your mother wouldn't have accepted anything less. Vivian's pen goes still. Something fractures across her face for 1 second. Then blankness closes back over it. Sheldon pushes the final document forward. The irrevocable trust holding $1,847,000. Every cent Nadine left, sealed until Wren turns 25 or earns her degree. Your ex-husband has vanished, Sheldon continues. Missed his arraignment yesterday. Warrants are out in 3 states. Vivian's grip tightens. Decker wouldn't. He crossed into Illinois 2 days ago, walked away from his attorney and his plea deal and left you to answer for everything alone. The notary drives the stamp into each page, heavy, deliberate thuds like coffin nails going in. Sheldon lowers his voice. 3 days back, you contacted Decker's defense attorney and offered to testify that Mr. Whitaker coerced you into the fraud. Claimed he threatened to take Wren unless you helped forge documents. You were ready to put your own father in prison to reduce Decker's sentence. The words hit like a fist. Nothing moves in my face. The attorney declined, Sheldon adds. Too much evidence pointed the other way, but her loyalty to him outlasted his to her. I look at my daughter. Her eyes are on Wren and the crayons, and there's something in her expression I can almost identify. Longing, maybe, or the faint trace of a maternal instinct she never developed. Mommy has some rules to follow now, baby, she murmurs to Wren, her voice cracking. Grandpa's going to help us. Wren keeps drawing. Doesn't look up. Daddy never followed rules. That's why he's gone. The notary stamps the trust document. Final. Absolute. No appeal. For the first time in 8 months, I breathe without my chest caving in. 6 days on Christmas Eve, I carry out something I've held in reserve since Nadine's burial. The farmhouse smells of pine and cinnamon. Wren sits cross-legged on the floor in her red wool dress, a gift from Burl's wife since Vivian hasn't put new clothes on her daughter in 7 months. Afternoon light slants low through the windows, turning dust into drifting gold. I bring the wooden box out from my bedroom. Nadine's antique jewelry box, hand-carved mahogany roses worked into the lid. My wife drew her fingers across those roses every single morning like a small private prayer. I kneel beside Wren and set it in her hands. This belonged to Grandma Nadine, I say. She told me to give it to the strongest person in this family when the time came. That's you, Wren. You're the strongest one among us. Wren's eyes go wide. Is there treasure in it, no sweetheart? Something worth more. Proof that you matter, that you're protected, that no one can ever take that away. I watch her fingertips trace the carved roses on the lid, the same ones Nadine touched each morning when she kept her wedding ring inside. And I wonder whether my wife somehow knew this child would one day need shelter from her own parents. Wren works the latch open, careful and slow. Nested inside on red velvet is a sealed envelope. The handwriting seals my throat. To the grandchild I'll never meet. Nadine's script. Written 3 weeks before she died. What does it say, Grandpa? My hands aren't steady pulling the pages free. 2 of them. Nadine's careful hand. I read the first paragraph to myself. If you're reading this, it means Vivian or whoever she married has caused you pain. I always knew it would happen. I could see it in my daughter's eyes long ago. The ability to love only what costs her nothing. Garland will protect you. He's the only one who loves without terms attached. Trust him. He'll give up everything to keep you safe. Wren looks up at me, her 6-year-old face carrying a weight that doesn't belong on Christmas Eve. She's quiet a long moment, the box pressed to her chest. Then she asks what breaks my heart clean through. Grandpa, will Mommy ever hold me for real now? Like she used to before Daddy got so angry all the time? Or will she still only hug me when people are looking? I open my mouth and my phone goes off. Petra Halverson on the screen. Text preview: Decker Coldwell apprehended at Canadian border. Extradition hearing set for January 3rd. Vivian's cooperation required call immediately. Wren's small voice rises through the buzzing. Grandpa, what does sacrifice mean? Grandma Nadine's letter uses it a lot. Judge Featherstone's gavel falls on December 29th at exactly 3:47 p.m. One crack of wood on wood and everything Decker Coldwell built comes apart into legal fragments that will take 15 years to repay. 5 days earlier, I'd given Wren my answer on sacrifice. It means caring enough about someone to surrender what you want so they can have what they need. She'd held Nadine's letter and nodded slowly the way children do when something reaches all the way in. Now I sit beside Sheldon Orvath watching Decker stand before Judge Featherstone's silver-haired early 60s, a reputation for shielding children that's made her name synonymous with justice in family court. Vivian is 3 rows ahead, hands folded. Mr. Coldwell, Judge Featherstone says your actions put a child in danger, defrauded investors, and turned your own family into a weapon. This court sentences you to 15 years in state prison with full asset forfeiture and restitution, totaling $847,000. The safety of that child is this court's first concern. Decker goes white. Then he swings. Your Honor, you're missing the real story. This whole thing was engineered by him. He stabs a finger at me. Garland Whitaker designed this from the start. He resented everything I had. Couldn't accept that Vivian chose me. Mr. Coldwell, I'd advise you to stop. He planted the evidence, forged those papers himself, drove a wedge between me and my wife. Judge Featherstone opens a folder. Mr. Coldwell, Mr. Whitaker supplied this court with 47 minutes of recorded conversations. Your own voice threatening to burn everyone if things unraveled. Your own voice describing how the signatures were forged. Your own voice calling your daughter collateral damage. I've heard enough. Decker's mouth falls open. Nothing emerges. The bailiff collects him and walks him out. He doesn't look at Vivian, doesn't say a word about Wren, just goes. In the corridor outside, Petra draws Vivian to one side. I stay close enough to hear. Your cooperation brought your exposure down to probation and mandatory counseling, Petra says. But that trust is a wall you cannot climb. Wren's inheritance stays locked away until she turns 25. Vivian nods. No tears, no theater. Then she turns toward me. The 2 of us standing in the courthouse hallway. Dad, she says quiet. I know I haven't earned it. But can we try one small step at a time for Wren? I take her in. The gray that wasn't in her hair a year ago. The lines forming around her eyes. The faint tremor in her hands. Steps build trust, I say. Show me the steps. Next afternoon, I'm parked outside Wren's school. Vivian arrives on time. The court monitor logs it. Wren makes straight for the swings. Then something I didn't expect. Vivian reaches for her phone. My chest goes tight, but the camera never opens. She holds the power button until the screen goes dark. sets it face down on the bench, kneels in the wood chips, and pulls Ren into a long, unhurried hold. No angles, no filter, no audience. "Mommy, how come you're not taking pictures?" Ren's voice floats across the yard. Vivian's breaks. "No, baby. This one's just for us. Just you and me, okay? Can we stay like this a little longer? As long as you want, sweetheart." I watch Vivian hold Ren with empty hands and ask myself the only question that matters now. Is this genuine change or just consequence dressed up as character? Ren spots me in the truck. Her face opens wide. She runs over and rattles the door. "Grandpa, come play with us." I hesitate. "You're with your mama right now, sweetheart. But I want you both. Please." Vivian walks over and meets my eyes. Something in her face reads different, quieter, or maybe just worn down far enough that the performance has finally run dry. "She's right," Vivian says. "That girl deserves both of us." "If you're willing for her," I say, stepping aside from the door. "Always for her." New Year's Eve arrives quiet and cold. 5 minutes to midnight. Ren and I are settled in the living room. The wooden box sits on the main shelf where Nadine's photo once stood by itself. Now the two share that space. Ren traces the carved roses while fireworks thump and flash somewhere across the neighborhood. Wood smoke drifts through the window, weaving into the scent of cinnamon tea cooling on the table. "Grandpa, how come Grandma's box is the most important thing here?" I draw her close. "Because it reminds us that love has nothing to do with money or property. It's about guarding the ones we love even when that costs us everything we have." "Did it cost you a lot to keep me safe?" "Had to let some things go. But nothing I gave up came close to what keeping you safe was worth." The wooden box glows in the pulse of red, gold, blue from distant fireworks, and I think of Nadine polishing it every Sunday morning, no idea it would one day stand guard over the granddaughter she never got to meet. Ren opens the latch. Inside, alongside Nadine's letter, are loose pages thick with crayon. "What's this, sweetheart?" "My journal," Ren says proudly. "I wrote down every day Grandpa kept me safe." See December 5th. Grandpa came to the police place. December 18th, Grandpa made the trust. December 24th. Grandpa gave me Grandma's box. Something tightens in my throat. The box is more than a symbol. It's a record. Protection laid down across generations, written out by the very child it was built to defend. Midnight strikes. Fireworks tear open the sky. Ren shuts the box and presses it against her chest. Then she looks up at me with those grave brown eyes, Nadine's eyes, and asks, "Grandpa, next year will you teach me how to protect people like you protected me?" And I understand the real inheritance isn't money or boundaries. It's the wisdom to hold your ground when the people you love need a shield more than your agreement. The courage to say no when yes would hollow them out. The strength to stand between innocence and harm even when that makes you the villain in someone else's telling. "Yes," I tell her, "I'll teach you everything I know." Outside, the new year opens up. Inside, 3 generations share a single shelf. Nadine's photograph, the wooden box, and a child's crayon chronicle of the day's love meant choosing protection over being easy to love. That's where this story brought me. Not to a clean ending tied up with a bow, but to a shelf with 3 things on it: a photograph, a wooden box, and a little girl's crayon journal. That was enough. I won't pretend the years between losing Nadine and reaching that New Year's Eve midnight cost nothing. They cost nearly everything. Sleep, peace, the version of myself that still believed family meant safety. But I believe God does not waste suffering. What was meant to hollow me out became the thing that made me harder to break. And what I learned, I am still learning how to carry it without letting it make me cold. Here is what I would tell any person standing where I once stood. Document everything, every conversation, every date, every promise made and broken. Memory fades. A paper trail does not. If someone pressures you to decide quickly, that urgency is the warning. Slow down. The rush is always for their benefit, never yours. Protecting a child sometimes means being the person no one in the room likes. Do it anyway. Their safety is not a negotiation. And when you build something to last, a trust, a relationship, a promise, build it so that the truth is already inside it, waiting to be found. If this story reached you today, I hope you'll share it with someone who might need to hear it. Leave a comment telling me what stayed with you. And if you haven't yet subscribed to Father's Silent Revenge, there are more stories here, and every one of them is told for the people who needed someone to fight for them and found a way to do it. Thank you for listening all the way through. I'll see you in the next one.